Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about What If Naruto Billionaire Justice League Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The small, sleepy little town of Ridgefield, Wyoming was about as unassuming as any tiny town dotted along the highways of the United States. With a population of less than 2,000 people in the entire county, it was pretty much as rural of a community as one could get, and still have the basic amenities of a town, like a grocery store or internet connection. This, of course, was the veneer that Ridgefield presented to those that passed through its narrow streets before they jumped back onto the highway and went on their way to some place truly interesting. For Charles Lepel, it was more than interesting enough. After all he could see beneath the thin layer of normalcy and boring appearance that Ridgefield and its people put up, the truth was as disgusting as it was fascinating to him. An entire town acting as the best for a coven of witches. The very thing he and his order were created to stomp out. Sadly, most of his brothers in arms had lost sight of that, their foolishness having led to a pact with the great enemy. Now hunting any but the most rogue of witches was forbidden to himself and his brothers and sisters of the order. That sacred task that he and his ancestors had performed since at least the 6th century. Now it was considered the actions of a warmonger. So places like Ridgefield blossomed across the continent and even the world. Something that he found absolutely disgusting and against his natural instinct. Just letting magic users and their sycophants to grow in strength and pervert the blessed earth with their filthy existence. They were almost as bad as the aliens that his comrades knew to be growing steadily in number across the world as well. Finally, turning away from his place peering down on the town, he turned to face the handful of his comrades that had followed after him. There were only 60 of them, but that was more than enough for a place like this. Sir K, have the disruptors and sentries been placed? He asked, turning to his second-in-command, a young woman, Sir K. Wagner. Prepped and ready to be put to use, Sir Charles. They can't run away, she replied sharply. Behind his helmet, Charles smirked at his right hand before turning to face his approaching left hand, Sir Reuben Creel. Are you certain of this plan, sir? The rest of the order might label us enemies for breaching the Treaty of Cambridge, Reuben said with uncertainty. Kay glared from behind the visor of her helmet, but Charles was more understanding. His brothers and sisters needed guidance back onto the proper path, not ridicule. Reuben, this is what we are here for. Our purpose is to remove aliens and magics from our world for the betterment of the planet and mankind, Charles explained. Reuben shifted slightly. All our armor and weapons originated as alien technology. Our disruptors have some sort of magic to them to be able to weaken a witch's spells. We are about to kill an entire town full of innocent people because they have some magic users there when we use magics and weapons ourselves to do it. The ends justify the means. We are not magic users, we only use the tools necessary to defeat the great enemy of humanity. One day we won't have need of all this anymore and we can toss it aside. Until that day we must do whatever it takes to reach our goal. Unless you want innocents to suffer the same fate as your father did? Charles replied far too easily to Reuben's worries. The younger man turned his eyes to the ground as the memory of his father's murder at the hands of a rogue which ran through his mind. Sir Charles was right. He was always right. As Reuben returned to the other gathered members of their order, he was filled with a new determination, while Charles reassured Kay that Reuben would become a model knight of eternity given time. Charles didn't wait long after that, choosing that it was best to hit Ridgefield before the sun rose. He thought it a bit poetic that with dawn a slightly more pure world would rise. The Ridgefield Coven was a very peaceful group. Only a handful of the people in the town were actual members of the coven, but every family had at least one member within its ranks. For the most part, there appeared no difference between those that were and those that were not witches. Ridgefield had been founded with that concept in mind. A melting pot of different shattered covens from around the world all settled into one spot. A community based on the simple shared goal of living a peaceful life and raising families. Among this community was the relatively newer Namikaze family. They had only lived within Ridgefield for a couple of years, ever since they had discovered that Kushina had become pregnant. Their nomadic lifestyle no longer felt good enough, and they were happily welcomed into the small community and coven here with open arms. Since then, Minato and Kushina had quickly become important members of the town and coven both. They were talented with their magic, even if they held some rather concerning beliefs for the rest of the community. They kept those mostly to themselves though, and made it clear they just wanted to raise their son in a safe and happy environment. Something neither of them received as a child. So for nearly 3 years the couple lived and raised their son in Ridgefield. Slowly but surely surrendering the semi-paranoid nature that had ensured their own survival since childhood. Just like everyone else, they never saw the raid on Ridgefield coming until the first explosions along the north edge of town began. Minato and Kushina both jolted awake as their house shook from the sudden violent attack. They scrambled out of bed and over to the window to see what was happening, only to stare in terror as they saw the northern side of their home, everything on the other side of the main paved street in their town, going up in flames as entire houses and shops were burst apart by the explosives bombarding Ridgefield. Kushina grabbed Naruto. Minato ordered as he quickly ran through an incantation to begin opening up a portal for his family. Transportation spells were something of his specialty. That was why he felt the edge of panic began to settle into his heart as the spell sputtered out. He stared at the small scorch mark on the wall where his spell had failed in brief confusion before more explosions, this time from the west, brought him back to the present. "They're real," he murmured. "What's real?" Kushina asked as she rushed back into the room with a bawling toddler in her arms. "I heard some rumors that the organization developed a sort of force field. Not to shield things but to trap things. They use it to trap rogue witches," Minato explained as he changed objectives and quickly tossed some rugged clothing to Kushina from the closet before throwing some on himself. "But no, that can't be right. They would have to be using it on the whole town. We would have noticed them setting it up," Kushina argued. She still quickly dressed as she needed to. "We have grown complacent. Being part of a treaty-protected coven like this, we all stopped looking over our shoulders. We should have known better." Minato growled, mostly at his own failure to be ready for this attack. "Come on," Minato said as he grabbed his wife's hand and led her and their son for the door. The explosions and sound of flames still roared, but by now the rapid pops of gunfire had begun as well, and the sound of screams filled the air. "Why are they breaking the treaty? Won't that start a war?" Kushina asked as the family ran into alleyways away from the advancing sound of the Knights of Eternity, as they meticulously made their way through town attacking the residents. "It should, but with how things are now, I don't know. We just need to focus on getting out of here," Minato replied before jolting backward, dragging Kushina and Naruto with him. Out in the street, a dozen heavily armored men and women marched around a large egg-shaped object that moved along on a set of small threads like a tractor or miniature tank. Opposite the advancing knights, a collection of townsfolk had organized themselves. A few had hunting rifles or shotguns, while a couple of their number were clearly wielding magic as light began curling around their hands in an unnatural manner. The witches let loose what should have been a devastating attack. Instead, when the spells, condensed blasts of magical energy, reached a point less than a foot from their targets, they seemed to shudder and pulse from an unknown energy. They still impacted their targets, though. They slammed into the forwardmost knights and hurled them off of their feet and crashing onto the roadway, even skidding a small ways. That, however, was not what should have happened. The spells had initially been strong enough to reduce their targets to ashes and even injure the others around them. Now, though, the targets were already staggering back to their feet. Their comrades stepped forward to cover them as they shakily regained their footing. The knights opened fire, their boxy weapons letting loose a torrent of gunfire that tore through the group. Those townspeople that managed to return fire were inaccurate, missing most of their shots. Out of the exchange, all of the gunners and witches as well as dozens of unarmed townsfolk behind them were cut down, while only 3 of the knights fell. A handful of others were wounded, but the force continued forward, blowing apart or burning down buildings as they passed and firing at anything that moved. Minato was horrified by the sight, and even the little boy in his wife's arms was too shocked by the horror of what was happening to continue crying. The blond man wisely led his family back away from the street and continued trying to flee. "Minato, they're heading everyone in this direction. It's their typical tactics. We can't escape that way," Kushina said as she pulled him to a stop in one of their, now former, neighbors' backyard. "I know, but what other choice do we have? It's the only way out," he said. "It's not a way out. Just a way to get us all killed. But Naruto doesn't have to die. You know that, we have to form the pact," Kushina said. Minato recoiled from her words, even pulling his hand away. "You want to make a pact with that thing? It's worse than the knights. We would be condemning him to a life in service to a monster. A demon." He was furious. "Well, at least it would be a life," she bit back. Minato's defense against her collapsed then. She was right. It was the only way and they had to hurry. "We need a sacrifice," he said quietly. "Go, find one of the knights that's checking the bodies and bring them here. I'll start on the altar and sigils," Kushina said before setting Naruto down and proceeding to cut her left palm with a small grimace. Minato hesitated a moment to watch as she began using the blood welling in her hand to begin scrawling evil-looking symbols along the concrete of the patio nearby. He hated it, but this was the course they had left to follow. Kushina worked carefully but quickly to draw out the marks necessary to summon the attention of one of the abandoned gods. Creatures so primordial and ancient that Earth, the planet itself, was still a new development. A spell forbidden by even the darkest of covens the world over. All the while, Naruto sat nearby silently watching, terrified but trusting of his mother and father, too shaken to even openly cry about what was happening. Kushina was heartbroken to see her child like that, but his silence was a blessing. It kept knights from coming to check the yard they were in. So far at least. Soon Minato returned. An unconscious knight dragged behind him, a woman by the look of it. Her armor had Serkei etched into the chest much like a military uniform might have a soldier's knave on the breast pocket. We better hurry. She was stepping away from the others to check out a noise when I grabbed her. They'll figure something happened to her soon enough, Minato said as he placed the knight at the center of the hurriedly created altar. I'm done, now we have to do the incantation as well, Kushina said as she took her place on one side of the bloody site. Minato grimaced before doing the same. Naruto chose now to snap back to the present as well and began crying loudly again. His parents had to ignore him for the moment though. They had already started, they couldn't stop now. No doubt they had a few short moments before the other knights came looking for them. Husband and wife together began speaking and curling their fingers and hands into positions that were almost inhuman and painful. Their voices steadily became unnatural and a sense of foreboding power settled over the area as Naruto began to cry even more loudly. The knight awoke then screaming as something seemed to be burning her from the inside out. She clawed at her chest and head, eventually succeeding in removing her helmet and clawing at her face as if trying to dig something out from beneath it. Until a single powerful pulse of energy released from her body, and she fell entirely still just as Minato and Kushina stopped speaking. Their toddler son looked on in horror as the bloodied woman jolted to a standing position at unnatural speed with audible sound of cracking bones and snapping tendons. Serkei's head rested at an unnatural angle and blood ran freely from her nose as she slowly seemed to settle into a position that looked incredibly uncomfortable. Her body stood despite being twisted and broken. Slowly her eyelids slid open though, and the nearly pure white eyes beneath them somehow seemed to take in the area around them with mild interest and surprise. It has been a while since I was awoken in such a manner, partially as it is, the being wearing Serkei said with a voice that sounded most similar to gravel being run through a blender. My lord. Kushina began only to grow silent as a cold dead hand suddenly grabbed her by the throat and easily lifted her up off of the ground. Do not speak my name, mortal. Something so insignificant should have known better than to summon me like some pitiful little demon, the being said before it released her. How annoying. It spoke again as it noticed the markings that restricted it. Cunning, I will grant you that, but these bindings are only so strong, and what I gathered from this one's mind, you are all very fucked is the word she would have used. Insignificant, we might be, but even so, we wish to ensure the safety of our child. Kushina coughed out in painful gasps as she rubbed at her throat. The being rolled its blank eyes before looking down at the child the woman had mentioned. Ever so slightly its eyes widened before a cruel grin spread across its face. I see. It is natural for any parent, I suspect. Even I have been known to be reckless when it comes to my offspring, it said, causing both of the humans to shiver at the thought of the being before them reproducing. We only ask that you take Naruto somewhere safe so that he is able to survive this attack. Your consciousness will be freed from that vessel upon doing so, Minato explained carefully. The creature snorted in amusement. Yes, being bound like this, even just such a small amount of their being as their consciousness, was incredibly painful. Soon the body housing them would burn away as their power tried to return, and it would force the being through an even more painful process of reforming their mind. Taking Naruto to safety would surely be a small issue, and a fair exchange for being freed from such a painful and annoying process. At least in Minato and Kushina's eyes. I will take your spawn to safety, but my release is hardly enough to pay for all of this inconvenience, it commented, getting even more worried looks between the couple. What else could we offer? Minato asked quietly. Entertainment, the being said, and suddenly both Minato and Kushina felt a burning sensation across all of their being, inside and out. Pure agony. Their very souls were ripped free and stolen away to entertain the monster they had summoned. That wasn't enough though. Its eyes settled back onto the weeping child who had pathetically crawled toward its collapsed mother and clung to her dead form. Yes. You will entertain me too, won't you, little one? The puppet of Serkei said as it snatched up the boy and held his shuddering form in its arms. Such fun, interesting entertainment you will provide. And even more if you have a little gift from me to go with it, she said as a twisted finger gently tapped him first on his chest and then his forehead. Blazing pain racked his tiny form and he passed out mid-scream. Still he breathed and the corpse of a knight smiled. A foul expression as the lips split at the side and tore open to stretch the smile from ear to ear. Now let us send you somewhere interesting. This little body will only last for so long, and then I will have to reform. I look forward to seeing you in a few years, my little champion of chaos. The being said in an almost motherly tone before Naruto vanished from its arms and Setsuke's body began to blister and burn as energy overpowered its form. Just as the dead knight began to crumble and burst into flames, another unit of knights entered the yard, pausing at the sight of one of their own before them, apparently burning away, all while smiling madly back at them. I truly cannot wait to reform and watch you little ants once more. I had forgotten how interesting little pests like you can sometimes be. And with that, Setsuke's body collapsed into a pile of boiling blood and ash. Sir Reuben stared in horror at what had happened before realizing that his comrade had been used for some sort of sick ritual as a vessel. You recall now why we must exterminate them from this world, Sir Reuben? Sir Charles asked as he joined them in the yard. Yes, I remember now. Suffer not the witch to live, Sir Reuben said, reciting a common mantra among the organization. And suffer not he who shelters the witch, for he is lost and swayed to foul deeds, Sir Charles replied with a nod before turning to face his forces in the yard. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, back to your work, he called out, and the knights returned to the massacre they had been perpetrating. Some might have thought that the massacre of Ridgefield would be the kind of thing to hit national headlines. Instead, it became the stuff of legend and conspiracy theories. Most doubted that such a place ever existed to begin with, let alone that it has been wiped out. Those that bought into it never drew close to the truth either. The prevalent theories being that the government has wiped it out as the fictional Ridgefield militia had refused some sort of shady government experiment, or that some government experiment had gone wrong and the military had cleaned house by terminating the town in its entirety. No one came close to suspecting that at the core of the event had been a coven of witches and an ancient knightly order dedicated to wiping covens like Ridgefield from the face of the earth. Slowly the event faded out of the minds of everyone, even those described as conspiracy theorists. The only real evidence kept deep within government agencies that even most other government agencies had no idea existed. That and one small toddler that had appeared on the steps of a firehouse, complete with a birth certificate and family records. The orphanage that took him filed a report, but due to the circumstances of the cases of both young Naruto Namikaze and the town of Ridgefield made sure that the information wasn't connected until nearly 10 years later. By then the United States Paranormal Investigation Bureau, or ASPIB, had been expanded by vast amounts to compensate for the amount of alien and supernatural phenomena that had begun to appear on Earth. After all, heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and others had been almost the only effective defense against the recent invasion by alien race. The same race responsible for the near annihilation of the Martian race some decades prior. Naruto came to the ASPIB's attention originally because of the number of strange occurrences surrounding the orphanage he lived in. The unit sent found that one of the children present was most definitely a Homo Magi, the subrace of humans that could wield magic. They realized exactly who it was when they began digging into their records and found the lost connection between Naruto and the Ridgefield massacre. The last survivor, one that barely recalled the event at all. While it got them no closer to answers for situation between the covens spread across the continent and the organization, as the Knights of Eternity had begun to call themselves, it did reveal an especially powerful Homo Magi just coming into his abilities. Something the United States government was ecstatic to get their hands on. So, for the second time in his short life, Naruto was torn away from all that he knew. For the second time he was quick to recover from it as well. The first time he had been too young to truly feel distraught beyond the loss of his parents. This time he simply had nothing he cared for at the orphanage to lose. His abilities had ensured he would not fit in well with his peers, and his ostracization had led to a near-continuous fight with bullies itching to vent their own issues out by punching down on the loneliest of the lonely orphans that lived together. The fact he hadn't outright killed one of these bullies yet was a small miracle in and of itself, but with how badly he had injured a couple after losing fights against larger, more numerous opponents had made it easy for him to cooperate as well. A mere suggestion that the agency could help him to control these strange powers, and Naruto was on board and completely cooperative. At least until they arrived to the facility, and he realized he had effectively been tossed into a prison for the magically capable. It only worsened when the test batteries began. Brutal, exhausting, and frequently painful experiments were frequently run on himself and the handful of other subjects the agency had snatched up across the country. Everything was tested, from their actual magical abilities, to their physical bodies, and to their mental acuity. Soon enough it became clear that the agency didn't wish to just learn about the extent of Homo Magi capabilities, they wanted to find ways to harness their power and forge them into weapons. As the director, a former army general named Hector Smythe, had told them when they assembled into the dining hall one morning. The Russians and Chinese already has divisions of their special forces dedicated to this sort of thing. So America is behind the curve. We need to expedite the process if we want to stay on top. Expedite it they did. Their testing became more like training, and soon, Naruto and the others could use their abilities to do things Naruto hadn't even imagined. It also meant Naruto and the other younger subjects had to be educated. Not to the same level of normal children, they lacked any sort of basic social training, instead they were force-fed knowledge in such a way that they could retain it in the most efficient method possible. The brutality, exhaustion, and pain only became worse. For years Naruto and the others were kept there. Never allowed outside the multiple layers of razor wire fences or allowed any privacy. Eventually something had to give. Naruto felt the stress building in himself. He had taken to curling a small built-up amount of pure magical energy around his hands when he became agitated in an attempt to calm himself. It wasn't enough on this day though. The examiner kept pushing and pushing for Naruto to be able to finally achieve flight. He did so, but they wanted it better, more smooth and instinctual than he was currently capable of. The negative reinforcement used on him became too much as he shakily lifted into the air for the 100th time, or so that day. With a cry of frustration he let a small, but potent, blast of red energy loose that washed over the facility, frying most of its monitors and other systems before dissipating. It also loosened the restraints on some of the first-generation subjects who had been pushed too far and been placed in collared restraints to keep their magic disrupted. Naruto had found himself locked away in his quarters for a couple days after that while some sort of riot began as 5 powerful Homo Magi were suddenly let loose on their captors. By the time they let him out again, there were many new guards and staff, and the restrained Magi were gone as well. Training resumed immediately but was different now. The focus changed to training the remaining Magi in how to combat others with similar abilities or other superpowers. Again the training became harder and more intense. The new guards were more numerous and even more sadistic than the old. Naruto was sure it would only be a matter of time before he and the other remaining subjects lost it and launched their own riot or escape attempt. As fate would have it, quite literally actually, the next and final escape attempt didn't originate from within the SPIB facility but from outside it. A solitary figure with a golden helmet had been investigating the strange sensation he had received almost a year prior, and with a few favors from the Justice League he was able to find the SPIB facility and tear it open like a tin can. Naruto and his fellows didn't wait for the chance to pass them by and launched their own attempt at freedom when Dr. Fate began his raid. For the first time Naruto killed someone with his magic. A handful of guards and 2 scientists, as well as a fellow subject that seemed to have lost themselves to the bloodshed and attempted to take Naruto's life as well. At the end of the chaotic day, the headquarters of the SPIB and nearly 90% of its staff were no more. Of the subjects they had held within, only Naruto and 2 others survived, huddled together as the golden helmet superhero softly settled onto the ground before them. He took in the sight of the 3 poor wretches before him. A teenage boy and what looked to be a couple in their mid-20s. The couple was weak for lack of a better term. They barely qualified as magi and had only survived the chaos earlier due to hiding and using their limited power together to ward themselves from the notice of the guards and other escape test subjects. The teenager though. He was abnormally strong and had a faint sense to him that both halves of Dr. Fate, Kent Nelson the host, and Nabu the Lord of Order could vaguely recognize. He is tainted by the power of a chaotic being, Nelson. You know what must happen. Nabu stated, simply causing the 3 survivors to share a confused and fearful look. No. He may be enveloped by chaos but he hasn't embraced it in any way, and he is clearly just a boy, Nabu. A far more human voice argued. There was a moment of silence before the man removed his helmet to reveal a shockingly old man. Despite his obvious age, however, he seemed healthy as a horse and clearly had plenty of fight in him. I'm sorry about all that, you 3. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Kent Nelson, but when I'm running about in this old thing, they call me Dr. Fate. The now introduced man said as he tapped the shining metal helm in his hands. You helped wipe out the agency guys. Saved us too, the male half of the couple said. Thank you, his wife added in hurriedly. Kent smiled sadly. Of course. I just wish I had come along earlier and freed you from that nightmare beforehand. No one deserves to be used up like they were using all of you. Now what though? Naruto asked. Kent stared back for a moment, locking with his blue eyes before he replied. Now that is going to be up to each of you. Why don't we head back to my home to figure it out? Eventually someone is going to wonder what happened here, and it's best that they don't tie us with all of this mess. Your records of even being here are taken care of so we can make a smooth getaway. The trio of survivors had no arguments with that, and soon all four were quickly headed back to the Tower of Fate to decide their own fates. They all stayed at the tower for a few weeks after that. They three of them were in incredible health. After all, the government wanted them healthy and powerful. Too bad for them that it backfires. Still, they needed plenty of time to regain their bearings. Tom and Lisa, the new names the couple had chosen, had been there before Naruto had even been brought in. They'd actually only been snatched because they managed to create enough residual energy to catch the Aspib's attention during their honeymoon. Lisa was all red from that reveal, but Ken had simply tipped his head to Tom with a grin. With the agency gone for good, the two of them had taken the fake identities that Kent and his connections got for them and settled for a modest, quiet life, finally free to live once again. Naruto was different, though. He didn't really understand the outside world properly anymore, and had no one to rely on. Just giving him a new identity and funds wouldn't help him at all. If anything, it would be setting him up for disaster. Fortunately, Kent Nelson had grown to become a lonely man after his wife had passed. Nabu made for incredibly poor company. He was more than happy to take him in and show him the ropes. That is, he taught him more than just a wider range of spells beyond uses for fighting. He taught Naruto to actually socialize and really live once again. Kent felt more like a kind and caring grandfather more than a simple teacher or caretaker. So it was natural that Naruto wanted to follow in his adoptive grandfather's footsteps. It didn't take much to convince the old man that he should be doing something productive with his abilities. After all, why have such abilities at all if he was never going to use them? Ken made him wait until his 18th birthday before setting out on his own to stop crime. He knew that many heroes, especially those in the Justice League, all seemed to focus on a single city or region and only left it for large-scale emergencies. Unlike them, though, his home in the Tower of Fate was located near Salem, a short ways north of the city. Salem as well as the nearby Boston were by no means strangers to crime, but compared to places like Gotham or Metropolis, they were perfectly peaceful. So Naruto started in Boston, but soon used his abilities to work up and down the New England coast, never straying into the territory of the Big Boy Blue or the Bat. Taking on petty criminals was little to no challenge, and organized crime was only slightly tougher. His powers were extremely unfair in dealing with them. A few twists of his fingers or a flick of the wrist, or in some cases a mere spoken phrase, and it was over, and all that he had to do was deliver the bad guy to jail. Unsurprisingly, such easy pickings were not satisfactory for the young man stepping into crime fighting, and he soon began looking into far darker corners. The streets of Central City were typically patrolled by the Flash. For the last few weeks, though, he along with much of the rest of the Justice League had been preoccupied with handling a series of problems from various supervillains that had temporarily joined together. The attacks they had launched in New York, Metropolis, and Gotham had been devastating, but thanks to the League they were contained and civilian casualties were astoundingly low. However, the rescue operations had to continue on for days, and the League was all hands on deck in the meantime. With their focus on the cities in need, their hometowns were suffering. Some places were better off than others. Star City, for example, had a new rising star among the hero community in the shape of Black Canary patrolling their streets. Others were not so lucky. Central City was in pretty good shape on the surface, but with the absence of the Flash, a handful of higher-level criminals had decided to take advantage and attempt to move into the area. The most obvious and easy to curtail for Naruto when he decided to pick up the slack had been the subtle moves of a couple of East Coast crime families into the area. Turning 3 truckloads of assorted drugs and weapons into either lube or extra-large horse-shaped dildos had put an end to that move. It probably also got a lot of criminals killed by their own bosses somewhere if Naruto stopped to think about it. That wasn't on him, though, so he didn't bother to dwell on it. With the situation largely kept at a status quo for the city, Naruto planned to make his leave and continue to some of the other less secure cities. He found that he couldn't, though. Instead, he felt an odd, yet familiar presence somewhere in the New Brighton neighborhood of the city. Drifting between the buildings, Naruto settled down into an alleyway that seemed to be the origin point for the sensation. As he stepped out into the path of the alley, though, he couldn't properly prepare for the sudden surprise attack that was launched his way. A club formed from what had been a stop sign sent Naruto flying through the air until he righted himself and stared down in shock at the force of the blow. Had he not been trained so rigorously by the agency to keep a ward up around his body at all times, he likely would either be dead or crippled by the strength of his sudden opponent. "Who are you?" he asked as the gray-skinned being strode out of the shadows with what could only be described as a sneer decorating its face. The pair of individuals couldn't be more different. Naruto was a lean young man with bright blonde hair that contrasted with his darker set of form-fitting robes perfectly. After all, Heroes had to have an image, and Naruto looked equal parts a warrior and mystic. The figure below was dressed in nothing more than a tattered pair of trousers and had skin that looked like it could have been made of concrete. Its red eyes glared up at Naruto as he hovered above and slammed its road sign club into the ground. "I am the Herald. Come down so that I might end you and move on with my day, child," it said with a voice that sounded like two pieces of steel scraping across one another. "Alright, Herald is kinda a crap name, so Harry it is. Listen up, Harry, randomly swinging signs at folks is just bad manners. Plus I'm pretty sure stealing road signs is against the law, so give up now. That or stand still and let me turn your big gray self into a balloon animal so I can float you down to the police station," Naruto commented. The Herald growled at Naruto's words. "You speak far too much for a true scion." With that simple comment, the Herald spun in place and launched the sign at Naruto like an oversized javelin. The blonde's eyes widened before he pivoted in the air out of the way and twisted his right hand to summon up a flicker of his power. Before the improvised spear could impact the glass walls of the building across the street, Naruto turned it into a cloud of sand that harmlessly fell into the street below. Turning back to face Harry, Naruto was shocked to be face to face with the beast as it had launched itself into the air right after its weapon. Harry wrapped its thick stony arms around Naruto tightly as they plummeted back to the ground. The landing was jarring, but Naruto could tell that whatever his new acquaintance had planned next would be much worse, and so he quickly worked his hands into motion to regain the advantage in this fight. Before it could slam him into the ground and likely finish him off from there, Naruto willed the nearby street lamps to suddenly coil and stretch like living vines that wrapped tightly around the Herald's arms, legs, and neck and slowly forced him to release Naruto. "Harry, we just met, you should buy me dinner before trying to take my body," Naruto joked, getting a snort from somewhere nearby. "You still speak far too much for a scion," Harry replied gruffly. "Yeah, okay, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but let's get you down and head down to the station, alright." The Herald eyed Naruto coldly before attempting to break his restraints. It became clear that it was pointless. As physically strong as he was, he had no chance of beating the 5 coiling tentacles of steel that held him in place. "Do not think that this simple trick means you have passed my challenge, scion. We will see one another again," Harry said coldly. "Yeah, sure we will," Naruto said as Harry seemed to fade from existence, slowly disappearing into thin air as if he was just a figment of Naruto's imagination. "That is definitely something I need to talk to Kent about," Naruto mumbled before jolting as he noticed a presence nearby. "I gotta say, after the week I have had enough of magical bullcrap, so I definitely appreciate you handling that one, friend," the presence said with a cheerful tone. Naruto turned to look at the stranger before his eyes widened at the sight of the grinning speedster before him. "What's the problem, kid? Cat got your tongue?" the Flash asked. No, it's just I thought you were busy on the coast, so Naruto began to defend himself before clearing his throat and standing a bit straighter. "Some folks were making a move on Central City while you were indisposed. I decided to step in and keep the rats away while you were busy," Naruto explained in a more serious and determined tone. "Whoa, hey, relax. I'm not Batman. I have no problem with a little help on my home turf from time to time, especially when I'm busy like I have been. Now, before we get all caught up in explanations and things like that, maybe we should start with introductions. Call me Flash. What's your alias?" Flash asked, clearly able to tell that Naruto was still pretty new to the whole crime-fighting thing. I haven't really thought of an alias," Naruto admitted while scratching at his head. He figured that he would earn a nickname from the public and run with it. "Trust me, you want to control the narrative on that. If I didn't, I'd probably be called something stupid like the Blur or Runs Fast Man," Flash replied. "If you don't have any idea though, what about Scion? Like your big gray friend was calling you?" "Scion? Kinda random, truth be told. Although I guess it does fit in well enough, all things considered," Naruto admitted, thinking of himself as the scion of Kent in a way, or the lost people of Ridgefield. "So?" Flash urged. Yeah, call me Scion," Naruto said with a small grin. "Ha, alright. Nice to meet you, Scion. Now can you give me an idea of what that was all about, and where that big guy poofed off to?" the more experienced hero asked. "I have no idea," Naruto answered truthfully. "Never seen that guy before in my life. Still, he kind of felt familiar, I guess." Flash nodded. "It sucks to say it, but that happens. And it usually ends up with a big pain in the ass of some kind. Now, since you're here and evidently have been helping my town out a bit, how about a meal? Always good to catch up, cape to cape." Naruto nodded, a bit more excitedly than he wanted. Although he was being asked to come eat by a member of the Justice League, so that was definitely worthy of a little bit of fanbang. If Flash noticed, he didn't say anything, and the pair casually made their way to a diner that the Flash stopped by frequently while in costume. Neither realizing they had just made their first step onto a new path of a friendship that would last years. A year. All it took for Naruto to go from meeting the Flash, or rather Barry as he knew him now, to being invited to join the Justice League on a permanent basis was a year. Now, of course, in that year plenty of different opportunities to impress the other members had come by. He had made sure to do his utmost to make it clear he wanted into the big leagues, but wasn't completely focused on the glory that came with it. Sion was a hero now. One that handled an abnormal amount of the more abnormal villains and cases. He was already one of the go-to figures for the Leaguers if they needed help with something that delved deeply into magic, or something similar. The fact that he was very powerful and skilled in a fight despite his age made it a bit easier of a choice as well. So now he was the newest, and the youngest member to be brought onto the League roster, replacing Black Canary that had joined a little over a year earlier at 21. Naruto was all set to accept the invitation. The only issue was that an old friend had come to visit on today of all days. Harry was back, but this time in Salem, and clearly set on wrecking the town until Naruto came out and faced him head-on. Foolishly believing that the woods outside of Salem would somehow protect him better than the urban sprawl of Central City had. "Alright, Harry. I'm here for a fight, but we have to make this quick. I have a meeting in a couple hours and I don't want to be late for it," Naruto said, causing the warrior to snarl at being treated as an inconvenience rather than a threat. "Today is the day of your end, or yo." Harry began, only for the ground to suddenly begin opening as if it was a giant mouth. Naruto really did not want to spend time fooling around today after all, best to end things quick. Flash was beginning to sweat as Batman continued glaring at him. The speedster was feeling a bit hung out to dry by his pal right now. In the last year he and Sion, or as he knew him by Naruto, had grown increasingly close both as comrades and friends. They had even met each other's families, or what could be considered family on Naruto's part. Dr. Fate was a pretty cool guy for being old enough to have vultures circle over him if he spent more than an hour outside at a time. "Flash, you vouched for this young man. Where is he?" Superman asked, trying to disrupt the darkening mood of Batman, who was clearly unhappy about being made to wait. "I don't know, but I promise you he wouldn't miss this for the world, and he wouldn't be late without a really good reason," Flash argued on his friend's behalf. He had vouched for him to be indicted into the League after all. The first ever to get the speedster to nominate them for membership. "Kid, you better have a damn good reason," Barry mentally hissed as he again took a moment to scan the area outside the windows of the Hall of Justice. "I'm right here." An unexpected voice answered his thoughts, causing Flash to jump to his feet. "What the hell?" he gasped. The Leaguers all looked a bit concerned, but their attention jumped back to the other side of the room as a sputtering red circle appeared as if made of some kind of ethereal fire, and the young man in question stepped through it into the Hall of Justice. "Sorry, Flash, I wanted to show you before this meeting, but I got caught up in a fight with the Herald again. I finally got telepathy down though. Kent is less excited about it than I am, and so far all I can do is pick up surface thoughts directed at myself and respond back. But hey, still cool, right?" Naruto rambled a bit. He was honestly a little nervous about being so late for his own induction ceremony. Harry had managed to claw his way back out of his trap earlier, and the fight had ended up lasting for nearly an hour. It was like the bastard was slowly adapting to more and more of Naruto's spells, meaning that Naruto had to learn more and more just to keep his advantage over him. "Cool, yeah, cool. Focus, man," Flash harshly whispered into his ear as he threw an arm over the younger man's shoulders and guided him to the center of the semicircle of Justice League members who took in the sight of Sion as he stood before them. "Sion, you're late," Batman said with absolutely no emotion at all. Naruto faintly grimaced. He was not especially fond of dealing with Batman's attitude. They both had a traumatic event in their past that had helped lead them to becoming heroes, and both had lost their parents. However, they couldn't have taken a more different path to both deal with the trauma and grow as a person. Naruto preferred to keep a much brighter and hopeful look on life, much like his mentor Kent as well as Flash did. There was no real good reason to make himself miserable while also encountering the likes of terrible crimes and the kind of people that considered themselves supervillains. "Yeah, like I said, I was attacked by a villain and the fight ran longer than it should have," Naruto replied. "You could have requested support," Batman pressed. "No offense, but what are you capable of doing to an extra-dimensional demon, Batman?" Naruto asked hotly as Flash stepped between the two with a bright and clearly forced smile. "Whoa, look at that time, huh fellas? We best get started with the ceremony and get it over with so that everyone can get back to work, right?" Flash asked as he stepped back over to Naruto and pulled him down close as the group began moving toward the room they had set aside for new inductions. Kid, you are killing me here. Trying to mouth off to Batman before even being officially accepted into the team is not a good idea. What the hell are you thinking? Flash demanded in a harsh whisper. What did you want me to say? I am not going to just let him walk all over me, besides I'm right. What the hell can he do against a literal fucking demon? Naruto asked. You might be surprised. Flash answered simply before rejoining the others and leading Naruto in after the League. Once they had gathered again, the League wasted no time in completing the brief ceremony to welcome Saiyan into their number. Naruto couldn't help but feel it had been a bit of a waste of time. The entire thing took 20 minutes and was primarily a session of being questioned by each of the Leaguers about one topic they each considered imperative for a hero. Once he had finished answering all but one of their questions, though, it was when things took a new turn. Do you feel like your age will affect how well you handle a situation? Batman asked gruffly. Naruto stared at the Dark Knight before nodding slowly. I think everything affects how we handle a situation. We are our experiences, right? So I will only be able to react in a way I think is right for the moment, Naruto answered. It felt a bit too much like a politician's answer for his taste, but what really worried him wasn't his own words. It was the slight twitch Batman underwent when he replied. Like Naruto had just opened a door that he hadn't meant to, but Batman had been hoping for him to. You are the youngest to even be considered for induction into the League. Batman began. Perhaps having someone else evaluate you on a few patrols would be a good idea. That could be a good idea. Superman nodded along. I agree. Wonder Woman also chimed in. Naruto felt himself growing irritated at the actions. The special circumstances being set up for him, whether because of his age or in Batman's case paranoid suspicion, felt like the League was biased against him. At least some of the League. He's only a couple of years younger than I am. Plus he has one of the original 7 vouching for him. Doesn't that seem like enough? Black Canary asked, getting Naruto's attention and no small amount of thanks for standing up for him. You were far more disciplined and had a much longer track record of working with Green Arrow and a handful of others to not warrant something like this. Batman replied, simply shutting the blonde woman down immediately. Now hold on. I vouched for him. Is that not enough for you guys? Flash asked. A couple of the others like Superman and Wonder Woman sent him apologetic looks while Batman carried on immediately, not bothered in the slightest by the doubt he had in Flash's perception. I volunteered to follow him around for a week then, one of the others said, surprising them all that someone wanted to volunteer for what would likely get called babysitting in the long run. Hawk Girl? Several of them asked in surprise, getting the woman to roll her eyes at them all. Really, they acted like she hadn't had a long career back on her original home world before all of this. I trained a few cadets back home before everything and before having to help get them off of Earth. I have experience, and that's what this is all about, right? She asked them all. The League had no real argument there, and as much as Naruto disliked the idea of being babysat to get into the League for real, Hawk Girl was one of the members of the team he knew the least about. He wouldn't mind getting to know her, even if he would have a bit of a hard time keeping his eyes to himself. All the women in the League were the pinnacle of beauty and athleticism, and she was no different. Very well. That's all for this meeting, you are dismissed, Batman said as he left. The others rolled their eyes, but they did as he said all the same, except for Saiyan, Flash, and Hawkgirl. The bird-themed heroine stepped over to Naruto with a small grin as she gave him a once-over. She, like most of the League, had looked into the young hero when Flash had begun talking up his accomplishments in previous meetings. His background was definitely something of interest to the League, as in most of it was unknown. Between Dr. Fate and the Flash vouching for him, that fact was largely overlooked, but Hawkgirl was intrigued after watching a few of the recorded fights he had been in the last year. Especially with his recurring enemy, the Herald. A creature that only seemed interested in attacking Saiyan and spreading utter chaos between the moments that the young hero would banish him from the material world in one way or another. I need to get back to work, so I'll see you later, Naruto. Hawkgirl is tough but fair, so you'll impress her easily enough, Flash said as he patted his friend on the shoulder before disappearing in pure speed. Now alone with one another, Naruto stuck out a hand to shake Hawkgirl's hand. Best to get a real greeting handled if they were going to be working together for a week. So, Saiyan? What exactly can you do beyond, well, magic? She asked. Naruto blinked, not sure if he should feel offended by that. Well, I have reality-bending magical abilities, so it's usually all I really need. I can scrap if I have to, though. Well, we will see about that. Do you want to get started? she asked. Naruto slowly nodded. No time like the present, right? With little effort, he created a portal and opened a path directly to his main stomping grounds back in New England, specifically Oxford Bay. Oxford Bay was a bit of a unique city when compared to many others. Practically tiny compared to the likes of Metropolis and Gotham City, Oxford Bay also had an incredibly low petty crime rate. That might beg the question of why it was that Naruto had begun to spend more and more time patrolling the city if the crime rate was so much lower there. The truth was, it was only the petty crime rate that was low. Oxford City had an insanely disproportionate number of problems. Corruption was rampant, and organized gangs ran both the city's underworld as well as its legitimate side of business. On top of that, Oxford Bay had more disappearances of women and children per capita than any other city in the country, and when combined with the number of unsolved murder cases, the city's true nature began to peek through. On the surface, Oxford City seemed the classic American ideal of a city. Under the surface, though, it was rotten to its core, and Naruto had decided to take it head on, despite the growing ire of the gangs that really ran the city. Today, for the first day of his week with Hawkgirl shadowing him, Naruto decided to patrol the dockyards of the city. The largest moneymaker for the gangs here had been smuggling weapons, drugs, and other items through the sizable port that Oxford could boast, only rivaled by the human trafficking that did much of the same. As he expected, Naruto didn't have a very hard time locating some smugglers making a deal with a corrupt pair of inspectors that should have been reporting the obviously illegal shipment of firearms and ammunition. The deal was going smoothly, like a normal business meeting rather than something akin to an arms deal. In broad daylight? You really picked a weird town, Scion, Hawkgirl said as she peered down at the deal going on beside him. Yeah, well, pretty sure if you asked one of them why they did it now instead of a time when there were less possible witnesses, they would just say something stupid like business is business, or whine about not wanting to get up in the middle of the night. Really, it's just because they don't care. Oxford Bay is so used to this sort of thing that nobody says anything, Naruto grumbled. He was already pretty sickened by some of the things he had put a stop to in this town. Bold of them. So what are you going to do? She asked. Oh, that's easy. Watch, Naruto said before hopping down to the street level and approaching the criminals. Hey boys, he shouted, drawing their attention in confusion before it turned to shock. Oh shit, it's Zion, one of them shouted and pointed. No, idiot, my name is Scion. Why do I even bother? Naruto grumbled before circling his hands up with red energy arcing around his fingertips, causing the guns they had all pointed at him to float up out of their hands before being flicked backward out into the bay. So give up and let me take you all in, or get roughed up and still go to jail. Your choice, fellas, Naruto said with a tone that implied he was entirely too bored to deal with this shit. Fuck you, kid, one of them shouted as he charged toward Naruto with an arm cocked back in a terribly telegraphed punch. Nah, I prefer ladies, pal. But I can fuck you up if you really want me to, Naruto said as he ducked under the punch from the chubby older man and smashed him in the face with his own uppercut that put the thug straight to sleep. Anybody else wanna play? Naruto asked cheerily. As the others all slowly tried to back away, he chuckled before twisting his hands again to peel off a couple of bands of metal from the crates nearby. With another flick of the wrist, the criminals all found their ankles and wrists bound with metal that had suddenly latched around their limbs. With all of them captured, Naruto sent a quick message to one of his contacts among the police department. Some of the officers he knew to be good, honest men and women. While he did that, Hawkgirl glided down to stand beside him and appreciate his handiwork. Quick, fast, and efficient. Pretty helpful power you have there. Seemed a bit like too much showing off, though, she said. Well, I was showing off for this lady I have with me, Naruto joked and flirted with her, causing her eyes to widen a bit. Careful, you are being a bit cocky, kid, she warned with a grin. Kid? Come on, you can't be much older than me. I mean, you're what, like 25? Naruto fired back. Try a bit higher, Hawkgirl said as she and Scion began walking away from the bound-up armed smugglers. What, like 30? Naruto asked. Higher, she said with a grin. The pair continued to banter back and forth, Hawkgirl turning it into a game to make Naruto guess her real age before eventually explaining to her newest colleague about her specific circumstances being a Thanagarian and the more personal situations involving her own life. By the third day, the two were getting along swimmingly. Naruto had wondered if he would get along with any of the heroes like he did with Flash, but it seemed like the heroes of the Justice League were far more human than he had expected. Ironic being as Shara was not actually human at all, being an alien cop and all that. That was a bit of a trippy story to hear, and it of course led to the uncomfortable discussion about Shaira's not-so-ex-husband. One day 4 things began to pick up. A bank robbery at the Elite Credit Union, one of Oxford Bay's most prestigious banking institutions, had both Scion and Hawkgirl racing into action to stop the situation before it became too violent. They landed beside the cops that had established a perimeter surrounding the entire block. Both normal officers and SWAT were swarming the area to lock it down while higher-ranking officers worked to get a negotiator into play to try and speak with the robbers. "Hey Captain, what's the situation?" Naruto asked one of the officers he worked with regularly. In fact, Captain Hooper was the officer he had turned the armed smugglers from earlier in the week over to. "Not good, obviously. We have anywhere between 7 and 12 guys in masks and body armor with military-style hardware. On top of that, they have the entirety of the bank's staff held hostage." "Shit," Naruto hissed as he turned to look at the bank. Newspapers and any other kind of block had been smushed up against the windows to keep the police as well as Naruto and Shaira from being able to peer inside. "Scion." Hawkgirl got his attention. Captain Hooper went back to work, organizing the officers present while Naruto stepped back over to his monitor. "The reason we have the League is because we know we aren't equipped to handle everything all alone. I have no doubt you could handle this, but with so little information and so many hostages," she trailed off, offering him a hand. "2 heroes are usually better than 1. Any ideas?" Naruto asked. "Well, I have a couple. I can easily come in on the roof. You can teleport though. Have you used this bank before? I know it's easier for you to move to a place you've been before," she commented. "Yeah, I can get in, and unless they are holding the hostages in the men's room I can do it undetected," he replied. "Perfect. I won't be coming in as quietly though," so she began. "You need a distraction. I can handle that. Here," Naruto replied as he handed her an earbud. "Batman is kind of a dick, but he doesn't hesitate to lend a hand when he needs to. Including providing gear," Naruto said as Shaira slipped the earpiece in. The heroine nodded before leaping off of the ground and circling the tower as she ascended up to the bank's roof. "Tell me when you are ready for my entry," she said over the communicator. "Will do," Naruto said as he twisted his hands and a red circle opened up in front of the sink of the men's room on the first floor. As he stepped through, though, one of the toilets in the stalls flushed and the door began to unlatch and open up to reveal a man with a mask lifted up on his face to only cover the top of his head. A rifle was leaned up against the stalls beside him. The man froze in the middle of buckling his belt. His eyes widened at the sight of the hero, an open portal sitting in front of him. "Chill out, man, you don't want to do anything stupid," Naruto tried to say. The bank robber didn't listen as his head turned toward his weapon, only for his belt to suddenly rip free of his pants and tightly wind around his wrists and buckle into place. Naruto grabbed the mask off of the man's head and shoved it into his mouth before tossing him through the portal and into the street behind him. A couple of finger movements, and the robber found himself tossed across the road over to the feet of Captain Hooper. "You work fast." The captain chuckled as he handed the prisoner over to one of his officers. "Yeah, sometimes luck is just on my side, I guess. Just not usually. Grab some of your guys and come on," Naruto said as he motioned for the portal. Hooper acted fast. It was part of why he was Naruto's favorite to work with. The man had a sense of humor, but he didn't fuck around when things needed to get done. A team of 8 police officers piled in beside Naruto with Hooper at their head. "Okay, you guys all stay here. I'm going to." Naruto began, only for one sergeant to try and push past him. "Listen, kid, thanks for using your freaky powers to get us in, but don't you think you ought to stand by and let the police do their job?" he asked sarcastically. "Tom, you need to relax. Scion's been doing good work with us," Hooper said sternly. "Yeah, Tom, you need to relax. Besides, we want to keep from getting the hostages killed. So maybe one reality-altering hero versus over a half-dozen trigger-happy boys in blue would be the better bet," Scion snidely commented. Tom sneered but stepped back at the harsh looks from the 3 superior officers that clearly did not have his back in this argument. "Cap, where did you get that guy?" Naruto had to ask. Hooper sighed. "I didn't get a choice in hiring him. Family up the food chain somewhere made sure he got the job, but I know he got fired from the ATF for being too aggressive." Naruto, as well as a couple of the officers, stared at him after he said that. "Did I just hear that right? Someone was fired from the ATF for being too aggressive?" Shaira asked in shock over the earpiece. "How does nope, I don't even want to know. Just keep that dude under control, man," Naruto said to Hooper before slipping through the door into the empty hall. He crept along the hallway, only pausing when he reached the junction for the next corridor. 2 men armed with a rifle and shotgun each were making their way toward him. They were beginning to get concerned about their comrade that had disappeared into the John nearly 10 minutes prior now. "I told that idiot he needed to stop eating all that greasy-ass food, man," one of them complained. "Yeah, well, not like it matters now. We should have been in and out of this place in half an hour tops. An hour later, and we are setting up shop like it's the fucking Alamo. I didn't sign on for no suicide mission, man," the second pointed out. "Well, what else are we supposed to do? They got it surrounded. I'm just happy none of them costumed freaks are here to bust our balls. We make it too much of a problem for the cops and they'll back off. Those crazies in the capes don't play the game right," the first commented. "You really know how to jinx yourselves," Naruto commented as they came face to face with him. Already his hands had tightly gripped the receivers of their weapons and begun disassembling them with his magic. As they pulled the triggers, nothing happened while the ammunition floated by their heads. "Fucking freak," the first shouted, only to find the rug at the center of the room quickly snapping into the air and rolling him up before floating down the hall to the waiting police officers. "You and I need to have a chat. You need to tell me how many more of you there are and where they are at, or I am going to literally send you to hell for 5 minutes," Naruto said with narrowed eyes. The robber's eyes bugged for a moment before he began stammering out his answer. There were only 5 more of them if he already got the guy in the bathroom. 2 were watching the hostages on the first floor while another one was with the bank manager on the 3rd floor, and the last 2 were still packing up money in the vault down in the basement. Naruto grinned at how easily the man gave up the information before he proceeded to knock him unconscious and levitate him back to the police waiting in the bathroom. "Did you catch all that?" Naruto asked. "Yeah," Shara replied. "Can you actually send someone to hell?" "Nah, well, actually, maybe. I don't think so, though," Naruto said with an unseen shrug. Hawk Girl was silent after that for a moment. Naruto almost chuckled as he imagined the flat stare she currently had. She shook it off quick enough, though. "I'll get airborne and come for the gut with the bank manager. You got the pair with the hostages?" she asked. "Easily," Naruto answered before heading for the area where the hostages were being kept. He moved through the halls of the bank easily enough. A few desks had been pretty badly shot up and he passed the 2 dead security guards, which killed any good mood he'd had up to that point. The pair of masks he was about to take on were going to go down a bit harder than their buddies had. Just nowhere as roughly as that poor idiot on the 3rd floor. "I'm in position," Hawkgirl said. "Right," Naruto said as he too settled into a place just out of sight of the hostage takers. A couple of the bank staff could see him but averted their eyes so as not to give him away. The robbers were both on the far side of the room. The male was a thin, tiny guy, but was clearly a sadistic freak as he toyed with the hostages, pressing the barrel of his gun to their foreheads while singing children's rhymes and making fun of them for being terrified as he did so. The other was the largest woman he had seen that didn't have some sort of powers. She carried an actual belt-fed machine gun. She could easily waste half of the hostages in the time it would take Naruto to cross the room. And that would be only if most of the shots were lucky enough to not be kill shots. It was hard to decide which was the bigger threat. If he went after the woman first, he could stop her from spraying fire across the hostages, but the male seemed much more trigger-happy, itching to put a few holes in the hostages. It boiled down to, could he take down the male before the female could properly react and then take her down, or was it better to focus on her so that only a couple of hostages could be killed before he took the man down as well? With the 2 of them on completely opposite sides of the room, it wouldn't be possible, even for him to take them both at once. "Are you ready?" Shara asked. Naruto could pick up the small amount of concern in her voice. With a deep breath, Naruto prepared himself. "Yeah. Hit M." With that, he jumped into action himself, lashing out with his right hand. He sent a pulse of magical energy that blasted the woman off of her feet, along with all of the furniture next to her, and sent her through the wall. If he had allowed himself, Naruto would have paused in surprise at that. He hadn't meant to hit her with so much force, but he needed to handle the other robber before he could think about it. His left hand was already in motion as all manner of things around the office began to pepper the robber, sending him stumbling backward as he tried to shield himself from the rain of pens, staplers, and lamps that were bombarding him. Naruto didn't let up as he closed the distance, and with a flying tackle took the man to the ground. He cracked the man across the jaw a few times while his other hand fought for control of the handgun. The robber refused to release it though, leaving Naruto little choice as he couldn't get his hand on the actual weapon itself. Instead, he pulsed another burst of magical power through his palm. It impacted the robber's wrist as it was pinned to the floor at point-blank range. Again, unlike he had intended, the wrist didn't break, it burst into a bloody stump as too much power was used. Thankfully, he didn't scream for long before the shock of the injury made him pass out. The blood-spattered hostages screamed plenty enough for him, though. Naruto couldn't focus on the injury he had just caused, though. Despite being blasted through a wall, the woman was already climbing back to her feet and working to level the heavy weapon she lugged around on Naruto and the hostages. He didn't hesitate to answer with another blast of magic that sent her flying once again, and the burst of fire she managed to get off careening at wild angles around the office, thankfully missing any of their intended targets. The sound of gunfire sent the police from the bathroom into action as they raced to secure the building. Hooper, Tom, and a couple of other cops came in just in time to see Naruto kick the weapon out of the woman's hands and land another brutal kick to the side of her head that put her to sleep. Cap, there's 2 more down in the vault and the one in there with the hostages is missing a hand. He needs medical before he bleeds out, Sion said as he let the 2 other officers take the woman off of his hands. As Hooper and Tom stepped into the office, they paused at the sight before them. Jesus Christ. He blew off the guy's hand. Tom muttered while glancing at Naruto with clear apprehension. He ain't dead though. Get him to medical, now! Hooper ordered as he grabbed a hold of the robber's shirt and motioned for Tom to grab his ankles. Naruto watched on as the other officers began to rush in and secure the hostages. It didn't take long for Hawkgirl to join him. A limp criminal being drugged in one hand and mace gripped in the other while resting on her shoulder. The roughed-up bank manager followed along behind her closely. Well, looks like you handled it well enough down here. You are going to catch some flack for that guy though, she said, motioning to the man with one hand as she tossed the unconscious crook in her hand to the feet of the police nearby. He isn't dead, plus I didn't exactly mean to do that. Sometimes I accidentally put a little too much behind an attack, Naruto said with a little shame in his tone. It happens. Don't forget it, but don't dwell on it. Especially right now. We have 2 more of them downstairs, she said. Naruto sighed. We need to do some uplifting shit after this after I take a shower though. Pretty sure I can taste that dude's powderized hand right now, Naruto said with a sour look. We'll just hang out for the rest of the day. Grab something to eat and try to relax. First thing is first though, Hawkgirl said as she turned to head toward the vaults. Right. Naruto nodded as he followed along, not failing to notice just how fit his current teammate looked while tensing up for a fight. She didn't fail to notice his roaming eyes either, causing her to chuckle at the young man's expense. It was the 7th day of Hawkgirl accompanying Naruto on his patrols, and needless to say, if Batman had hoped for Hawkgirl to be harsh and discourage Naruto's heroic career, then that most definitely was not happening. Instead, the pair had grown incredibly close over the last week. While Naruto considered Flash almost like an older brother, Hawkgirl had become something else. He couldn't say that they were like siblings. They definitely didn't have that sort of relationship. However, after spending so much time together both on duty and off, they had struck up a close friendship. They were just exceedingly comfortable with one another. More honest with each other than anyone else. For lack of a better phrase, they really just clicked. Not quite romantically, but it was almost closer than that. So, you really said that to him? Naruto asked Shara as they casually glided through the air over Oxford Bay. Well, yeah? What else was I supposed to say? You have to remember I was married to Kata despite everything and no longer really loving him. I might have come to love John as well, but after the Thanagrian invasion and my role in it, she drifted off. Clearly it was an uncomfortable topic for her. She was a bit shocked she was sharing this with Naruto after only spending about a week with him. However, Naruto just had the nature to him that made it possible to tell him whatever was bothering you. Plus, while he had his darker, more violent moments, he genuinely just wanted to help however he could, and in this case meant listening to his friend's problems with love. Love gets complicated, I guess. I don't have a lot of experience, I guess. My most serious relationship was for 10 weeks with some chick that never even knew my real name. I don't think I can offer much in the way of advice, Naruto admitted. Well, that's really fine. I think just having someone to talk about this nonsense with is pretty helpful itself, she admitted. Listening, that I can do. Still, you're like me. Pretty blunt for the most part, so why not just tell him that even having come back you still feel the same about him? I mean, 8 years apart, plus another 2 since you came back to Earth. That is a lot of time to care about someone, Naruto said. That's the thing. I was gone too long for him. He moved on. I think he plans on asking Vixen to marry him soon, Shara replied. Wait, him and Vixen? Damn, I didn't know. Shit, that sucks. Naruto said in sympathy as he landed on a rooftop and gripped her shoulder to show he was sorry for her. It's life. I think I need a break from committed relationships for now anyway. I've been in one relationship or other since I was younger than you. Plus, due to some magic crap, no offense, John, Catter, and I all got to find out that it was pretty much the same in my past life too. She said. Oof, 2 extended lifetimes of bad romance. Yeah, I would want a break too. So you're just avoiding dating for a couple years then, or what? Naruto asked. No, more like I am just not taking it to the level of long-term commitment. Everyone needs a bit of companionship, even like this, or they go crazy. Trust me. 8 years of being alone out there taught me that lesson the hard way. Hawkgirl replied. Naruto squeezed her shoulder softly before letting go, while Shara sent him a soft smile. He was something else really. She had to acknowledge that. But that was enough personal private conversation for one patrol. They both planned to spend time together just like he did with Flash now that they were tight, so they needed to focus on the task at hand. Well, it's the end of your little probation or whatever you want to call it. You'll do great with the League. Just keep working to get the power of your magic under control and no one will be able to really complain. She said, getting a nod from Naruto as she spoke. So that's it then? Naruto asked. Yeah, I guess. I mean, we have a meeting tomorrow morning that I hope you show up on time for. I'll tell them a summarized version of this week and we'll just move on. You're kind of the first they bothered with this whole probation thing with. Take that as you will, she said with a shrug. Naruto frowned a little bit at the reminder of the slight bias against him for his age, but he supposed that was something he would just have to deal with. It was in the nature of the League members to try and protect people after all. We're done then? Wanna go get something to eat and trash talk some of the supervillains that you have had to deal with? Naruto asked with a grin. Shara shared his smirk with a glint in her eyes. Most definitely, but rather than just villains, let me tell you about some of the stuff I've heard about a couple of the members of the League. Naruto snorted in laughter as they both took back off into the air. He wondered if Flash wanted in on trash-talking people while eating junk food. The man was a terrible gossip, something Naruto liked to tease him about. Stepping back in front of the full strength of the Justice League for the second time in as many weeks was a bit daunting even for Naruto. The fact that he was standing in front of them with what amounted to a very formally written and delivered "I told you so" courtesy of Hawkgirl made it a bit of a fun time rather than a dreary meeting. After spending a week not only shadowing but at times cooperating and interacting with Scion, I can say without a doubt that he is more than capable of fulfilling the duties expected of a member of the Justice League, and I would go so far as to say that he would be an exemplary member of our organization in fending off the various threats that the people of the United States and Earth as a whole face. On a more personal note, I have gotten to know him quite well in our brief time working together, and while it may be surprising to many of you, I can say with absolute certainty that I would trust Scion to have my back in any situation and willingly trust him with my very life. Hawkgirl spoke boldly and clearly to the gathered members of the League. Naruto felt his eyes widen almost comically at the tail end of her words before he managed to school his features behind a normal jovial mask that hid every bit of the utter shock he was feeling at the moment. Sure, he had gotten close to Hawkgirl over the week and they definitely clicked, just like he and Barry did, but it was only a week. The praise she was giving him was crazy. It also mirrored the recommendations of both Flash and Dr. Fate though. The glowing recommendations from 3 heroes with such successful careers and the public image Scion had garnered for himself were enough for pretty much everyone to accept him. His youth had been the biggest hang-up for most of them after all. Now only a couple of people still felt a bit hesitant with him. The most notable being Batman and surprisingly, or not depending on how well one actually knew him, Superman. Both for their own reasons. Both for reasons tied to Scion's capabilities. While Superman was not outright suspicious of the now newest member of their organization, he was most definitely a bit wary with such a powerful magician of any kind around. He was infinitely more happy that the young man was on their side, so to speak. That didn't take away the fact that Scion's primary method of fighting was in effect one of the very few true weaknesses to Superman's own abilities. He didn't hold it against the young hero. That was the mark of the truly paranoid. However, he was still rather uncomfortable around him for the simple reason that he could theoretically pose a danger to Superman himself. The Man of Steel was sure that given time he could come around to feeling more comfortable around his new comrade as he had with the other magic-centered heroes in the League. It would take a bit of time and interaction though, so Superman planned to try and get to know Scion better as soon as possible. Batman, on the other hand, fit the supposedly exaggerated image of himself that Flash had given Naruto several times in the past. He really needed a good therapist and some sort of medication to help him with all of his personality. The man was suspicious of everything, beyond anything considered paranoid. The most aggravating part was it helped him be incredibly efficient as a hero. Unlike Superman, Batman had no desire to grow closer with Sion, though he did intend to learn literally everything there was to learn about him. Just in case. The two of them were among the minority of the League, however, which was good. Naruto was definitely happy to receive a warm welcome from the majority of the others. Flash made it clear how proud and excited he was that Naruto was joining the Justice League. Hawkgirl had made sure she was the first to officially welcome him as a first member. She said it was her right since she got him through the door. The others that made the biggest impact were Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and Black Canary. Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter were among the original founders of the Justice League like Flash and Hawkgirl were. They were some of the most cool-headed and calculating among the League as well, so to have their clear approval made him feel truly welcomed as a member of the organization. Black Canary was a bit different though. Congrats on getting brought on board. Nice to not be the youngest on the team anymore, she said as she approached him and shook his hand. I bet might be a little bit before I get the same reprieve though, Naruto said with a chuckle. Oh, longer than you probably think. I mean, the likelihood the next recruit will be younger than you is pretty slim. They won't accept anyone under 18 anyway, so unless you know a new graduate from high school that is up to par, I think you will be keeping the title of youngest leaguer for a while, she said with a laugh of her own. Great, just more reason for the big bosses to give me more of those looks, Naruto said, tilting his head so that Canary would follow his gaze to where both Batman and Superman were frequently watching him from across the room. Canary frowned slightly before giving him a sympathetic grin and gripping his forearm to try and reassure him. Give them time. You know how old folks get. Diana and John not included. Naruto chuckled at the joke. It was funny that the two oldest on the team were among the most accepting of him. Even more reason to appreciate their acceptance, he supposed. It sucks being the new blood, but even more so when you are the youngest. You'll be fine though. You made Hawkgirl your biggest supporter after just a week. That's impressive. Makes me wonder what she saw in you. We should patrol together sometime, Canary suggested. Naruto felt a grin spring on his face. He most definitely wanted to get to know Canary better. He wanted her to get to know him better too. She was the closest heroine to his age, and well, honestly, she was gorgeous. All of the women in the Justice League were, but while Naruto didn't believe in such a thing as love at first sight, he knew that attraction played a huge part in whether or not two people could make a successful couple. He was easily more interested in Black Canary from a physical standpoint than the others. I'd really like that. Plus, the advice of a more experienced hero should never be taken for granted, Naruto said with a small teasing grin. Canary grinned back as her eyebrows lifted questioningly. Are you trying to call me old? Oh, I would never do something like that, but then again, for me everything is older, Naruto replied, getting a giggle from her. You better be careful with saying stuff like that around here. Wonder Woman might not look like it, but she is very conscious about her age. Her last birthday she even made sure her cake only had 1,000 candles instead of 2,000. You don't want to bring it up with her, she said jokingly. Naruto huffed a quiet laugh at that before turning his attention across the room as he noticed one of the Green Lanterns, or more specifically John Stewart, briefly talking with Hawkgirl. Her smile looked fragile, but she was clearly acting happy for the man for something he was telling her. Canary noticed as well. Are you worried about her? She asked. Honestly, not really. She seems pretty tough. I don't like the idea of her just having to grit her teeth and bear it though. I haven't known her very long, but Hawkgirl is definitely one of my friends now, Naruto said as he saw her try to send him a reassuring smile to keep him from coming to check on her. She had seen how he looked at Black Canary. So, is there anything? Canary trailed off with a suggestive lilt to her tone. Now that is interesting, Naruto said with a hum, getting her to tilt her head in confusion. What is? She asked. Oh, the fact that the Black Canary is really a gossip. Don't think I missed on you trying to fish for a juicy story? Naruto teased. Canary playfully rolled her eyes as she flicked him on the arm. You really have a weird way of getting on people's good sides, don't you? But for your information, whatever comes to me stays with me. I don't spread everyone's secrets around. Actually, I am trying to convince the others that they need to set someone up to act as a sort of therapist for the League. Even if they just want to get something off their chest to let their guilt about something go, it could help them out a lot, Canary said. Everyone does seem like they have a lot of weight on their shoulders. Some more than others, Naruto observed. Everyone here deals with things that most police and soldiers would on a far more regular basis. To keep their identities secret though, they don't have anyone to really go to deal with that though. So they bottle it up. Worst possible choice, but the only one that everyone has, Canary explained. Naruto was quiet at that. He hadn't expected the conversation to take such a turn, but he kind of liked it. He could tell how important the other's mental health was to her. It was attractive in its own way. Sadly, as soon as he really started to hit it off with her, Green Arrow made their way over to them and curled an arm over her slender shoulders. "Hello there, pretty bird, congratulating the new kid on the block? Hey there, kid, big leagues at only 19. That's something to be proud of," Green Arrow said, though he seemed bored. "Thanks," Naruto replied as he shook the archer's hand. "Sorry that I didn't really get much of a chance to meet you, kid, but duty calls back in our hometown, so we have to be going. Come on, pretty bird," Green Arrow said as he began leading Black Canary away. "Oh, well, it was nice meeting you, Scion. We really should patrol together sometime. Those of us that are still young have to stick together after all," she said while playfully shoving the archer beside her. The man chuckled, but Naruto couldn't help but see just how much older the man was than her. Her joke was uncomfortably true. The two of them were by far the youngest members. The next oldest was probably Flash, and he was around 30 or so. "It was nice meeting you both, and we'll definitely work a case together or something," Naruto said to Canary as she left with a wave. Scion sighed at that. Of course, the moment he meets a girl that could understand his weird-ass life that he likes, she has to be taken. It was disappointing, but even after a year he felt like he was still just getting into the game as far as hero work was concerned. He supposed time would tell what was ahead of him as far as important moments in his life. "So, had enough of schmoozing with all the other members of the league yet?" a very familiar voice asked, getting Naruto to turn and smile at the approaching red-clad hero. "Never. Thanks, by the way. I wouldn't be here, or well, probably even Scion, if not for you, man. It means a lot to finally be part of the crew with you," Naruto said to Flash. "Geez, man, you are going to get me to blush. You got here because you deserve to be here. Remember that, both Hawkgirl and Dr. Fate saw the same thing as I do. You're a hero, Scion," Barry replied as he tightly gripped the younger man's shoulder. "That was really sweet," another voice said behind Barry, causing the man to turn and spot Hawkgirl smirking at them. "Hello there. Why are you sneaking up on me right now?" Barry asked with a humored tone. "Sneaking? Who is sneaking? I just wanted to know if you two were ready to get decked out in some normal people's clothes and go celebrate," Hawkgirl asked. "Oh, yes. Very much yes, I want that. We have to wait, the kid is 19, Barry said suddenly. "Barry, you need to relax a bit. Naruto could be killed tomorrow doing this cape stuff. He has earned drinks. We'll go get some and head back to his place. The little apartment he has in Oxford Bay is one of the nicest little apartments I have seen on the East Coast. It's totally unfair. I live in a hovel in comparison." Shiera bemoaned her housing situation. "Wait, did you move or something?" Barry asked. "I still mostly stay at the tower, but I figured my most visited cities should have a more permanent residence in case." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "How do you pay for them if you don't work?" Barry asked. "I have my ways," he replied. "Nothing illegal, of course." "I'm sure. Well, if we are heading out, we really shouldn't let him drink," Flash said as he turned his attention to Hawkgirl once again. "What, why not?" Naruto asked. "Because, again, you are 19. Dangerous job of a hero or not, you are too young to partake," Flash insisted like a good elder brother might. "Barry, you realize that to even get to this point as a hero we have all committed numerous minor crimes that would get us normally in quite a lot of hot water. You know, like the vigilantism laws literally all of us break as heroes?" Shiera asked a bit mockingly. Barry huffed a bit at that, but conceded the point. It was a bit weird to think about it that way, but in a technical standpoint they were all petty criminals, or worse if you considered such things as battery, being that they frequently had to beat a villain senseless to defeat them. All right. Let's just get going," Barry conceded. It had been about 3 weeks since the real induction had taken place, and Naruto had become a part of the Justice League. He was still a bit disappointed in how little it really changed for him. Over those 3 weeks he had been contacted by the League's headquarters, the Watchtower, once to deal with a problem somewhere. Besides that singular time, which really had been pointless, a minor villain had managed to steal a prototype from the military but had absolutely no knowledge on how to actually use it. Naruto had been back to the same old routine as before. Back to focusing on more petty criminals and trying to snuff out corrupt officials in Oxford Bay. He spent a lot of time with Flash in their downtime. He usually had dinner with Flash and Iris by this point and felt like he was a part of the family more than ever. Sadly, the same couldn't be said for Hawkgirl. Since the night that they had celebrated together, the two heroes had been awkwardly dancing around one another. They weren't outright avoiding each other, But Naruto knew that they had both stepped awfully close to a line without realizing it at the time. One that he wasn't sure they should cross with one another, and clearly Hawkgirl was unsure as well. That was part of why the lack of tasks doled out by the watchtower had been aggravating. He wanted some form of work to take his mind off of things. Especially off of his interactions, or more realistically lack of interactions with Hawkgirl. So with lack of tasks from the watchtower, Naruto had turned to hunting down even the most minor of leads to the criminal element in Oxford Bay. That had proven helpful to an extent. The criminals in his city were nothing if not good at covering their tracks. It made the hunt all that more exciting for him. Lately he had been tracking a string of disappearances. Ones that had been covered up by someone of pretty high status within the city. Of course, the disappearances had been far more than simple kidnappings. There was no such thing as a simple kidnapping. Naruto hadn't been prepared for the reality of what he was walking into though. When Naruto finally found one of the missing people, it had been enough to make his stomach turn. Some sort of ritualistic murder that must have been hellish for the victim. He couldn't imagine the type of person that could do something like that to another human being. Even worse, he noticed they had used drugs to make sure that the victim had been conscious and able to feel every moment until their body gave out. A horrendous sadistic ritual coupled with all the disappearances that he had linked together. Naruto could already tell he was beginning to tug on the tail of a dragon here. Cults were pretty rare, at least he had thought they were. This one though was impossibly good at covering their tracks. They had to have at least a handful of members, but he couldn't even prove there had been more than one person in the room committing the terrible deed. Which means you all managed to cross the threshold of just another crazy cult into actually summoning some sort of supernatural nonsense. Naruto murmured to himself as he took in the appearance of the cult's symbol carved into the young woman's forehead. He needed to get this investigation wrapped up and these cultists handled fast before they could do any more terrible things like this. Thankfully, Naruto had a cheat in finding the bastards responsible. While they managed to elude any sort of traditional, or even more advanced methods of tracking them down, mystical means were quite a bit more difficult to avoid. Closing his eyes to better focus and gently pressing his hand to the forehead of the poor girl that was the cult's latest victim, he felt himself suddenly rooted in place as he saw the young woman's last moments. Her emotions and pain flooded over him, and he felt tears of sympathy for her build in his eyes. He got what he needed though. The men and women responsible all wore the same uniform except for their leader, who he recognized from his visits to City Hall. So the garbage crews are trash themselves. He grumbled as the vision faded and he struggled to push the horrific abuse and murder of the woman from his mind. He stared into her lifeless eyes sadly before closing them gently. I couldn't save you, but I will stop the bastards that did this to you. This was one of those moments that Flash had told him about, he supposed. He didn't know this woman in the slightest, but seeing her pain he wanted to end it. Sadly that was impossible, so he would settle for the next best thing. He stepped through a portal into the central hub of Oxford Bay's garbage collection and custodial department. A dozen people all in the same uniform as those in his vision, as well as the same faces, though no longer painted in their victims' blood, froze as they turned to look at him simply stepping out onto their break room table. Scion? One woman asked with a tremble of fear in her voice. No doubt she and all the others were worried that they may have been caught. Hey there. Sorry to drop in like this, Naruto said as he hopped off of the table with ease and locked the room's doors with a flick of his wrist. No, it's cool. Just why are you here exactly? One man asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes at that one. He knew him especially well. He'd been one of the ones that kidnapped the girl. He'd found out she was homeless and offered to give her a place to stay. After he had committed his own crimes against her, he helped prep her for the twisted ritual that the cult conducted. Why don't you guess why it is that I am here? Naruto said as his hands began to crackle with energy. You figured it out already? The herald said we would have more time. Another screamed as the cultists backed away from Naruto. Harry? That just doesn't know when to give up. But this bullshit is going too far. I guess I will have to find a permanent solution for him. As for all of you though, Naruto said as he began forming binds around the cultists' wrists out of the various items around the room. A couple tried to desperately bum rush him with a knife and pipe respectively, but Naruto wasn't a frightened homeless girl that was easy prey. He took a bit of joy out of beating the two of them down, until they begged him to stop. Did you stop when your victims begged you to? He demanded. You're lucky I'm not on the other side of things, otherwise I would use my powers to tear you apart by the fucking molecules. He bound up the last two and put them with the others before making it very clear he wasn't done as the first in the line of prisoners floated up off the ground. Where is the herald and where is your leader? Naruto demanded, especially wanting to find the man in charge. He knew the herald would be impatient, and after this latest ploy of his was ruined he would come looking for a fight. I won, the man began, only to let out a high-pitched scream as a red wave of energy swept over him from Naruto's hands. Try again, Naruto suggested. He simply stared back at Naruto with a hateful glare. Suit yourself, Naruto said with a shrug as a new wave began to pass over the man, pulling a scream of pain out of him yet again. However, the wave was much slower and more painful than before. You filth! One of the others cried, causing Naruto to snap his attention over to them. You profane our Lord's gifts and use them as a child would a toy. The herald spoke true, you are unworthy. One of the others cried out. Maybe you'll tell me what this guy won't, Naruto said calmly. Never. I will tell you, he is setting up the next site of sacrifice. Soon our master will be reborn into this world and will eventually come to reclaim the sliver of power that was stolen by you. The man spoke with the fervor of someone completely lost to their faith. It disgusted Naruto. I don't need you to actually verbally tell the location to me, but I can tell that you know where this next site is supposed to be at. That is all I needed to know, Sion said as he grabbed onto the man's head and pressed his thumbs against the man's forehead. The man tried to jerk free, but because of the restraints and Naruto's grip, his head barely moved and Naruto broke his way into the man's mind. When he forced his way in, Naruto realized he wasn't the first to do so. It seemed as a rite of passage every member had their minds entered by their leader, a man named Michael Koch, who was currently prepping an abandoned apartment building on the north side of the city. Thankfully, they didn't have a victim yet. Just as he left the mind of his prisoner, though, a rapid series of bangs sounded out in the truck bay of the building. Naruto blinked in surprise at the sound. Like 6 quick thumps of thunder right after another. He stood and moved to investigate the sound when he heard a muffled clear on the other side of the door, and had just enough time to bring up a shield around himself as the door exploded inwards. Even with his shield up, Naruto hadn't had proper time to brace himself for the pressure caused by the blast, and was kicked off of his feet and onto the floor. Fragments of the shattered door and wall nearby blasted into the room with enough force to kill several of the prisoners. Had it not been for his quick reaction, he would have been dead alongside them instead of simply sore. Move in and sweep the room, a voice barked, and 6 oddly armed and armored men and women entered the room with military-style efficiency. Once again, Naruto had to bring up a shield to protect himself as the newcomers began opening fire at him with futuristic-looking firearms. The rounds couldn't even begin to penetrate his shield though, so while a handful kept him trapped within his bubble, the rest quickly murdered the prisoners with ease. What do we do about him? One of the men asked. He, like the rest, appeared as some sort of science fiction-styled knight. He wasn't part of the target list. Still, he is obviously that hero Sion. He's a magic user, one of their comrades said as he fired a couple of shots that kept Naruto trapped behind his own protective barrier. And a part of the Justice League. We aren't looking for a fight with them yet anyway. Come on, the window is closing, the apparent commander ordered. You don't want to fight with the League? You just murdered people in front of a member, people who were held prisoner and under my protection, Naruto growled. You wanted to stop their sacrifices, so did we. We just did it better. Don't worry, freaks like you will get what's coming too, the leader said before he stabbed a long spear-like object into the floor, and the team of tactical knights each placed a hand on it before a thump of thunder and flash of white light disappeared the entire group. As if they weren't there. Naruto dropped his shield now that he was no longer being shot at and glared at the spot that the knights had just stood in. This didn't bode well. He created a portal straight to the apartment building that he had pried from the cultist's mind. Once he stepped through the portal though, he saw a familiar burn mark on the ground from the knight's transportation spear or whatever it was. The building itself was on fire and already collapsing on itself. Michael Koch was no doubt dead, and with him any kind of lead on what exactly had just occurred. With an agitated sigh, Naruto created another portal, this time to Captain Hooper's officer to tell him the situation. Naruto was more than a little disappointed after his latest meeting with the rest of the Justice League. They had nothing to offer him in regards to the mysterious knights that he had encountered. Batman said that their technology and efficiency was enough to make them a major threat, and the rest of the League was keeping an eye out for them, but at the moment no one had found anything. Sion began to throw himself into his investigation, hunting for these knights with everything he had. Especially since they had more or less acted on his turf and left again without so much as a hint of trepidation. That set off all manner of warning bells in his head at the prospect that they were so confident in their ability to handle him if they encountered one another. What's worse was they had handled him without issue. He knew a large part of it was because they had completely caught him off guard, which he vowed privately to not let them do again. Flash had begun to get a little bit worried about him lately though. Worse, Iris had started badgering him because Naruto no longer turned up for meals due to his investigation. So he began concocting a plan, but Naruto was a stubborn kid, so he needed some backup on that front. Which brought Barry to another issue. Naruto and Shara still avoiding one another. He had stayed out of it before now because he figured given a little bit of time they would laugh off the situation that the two of them had created. One that felt like it was straight out of a high school or college drama on the TV. The two of them had gotten too drunk when celebrating with Flash was celebrating with them, and ended up admitting how much they found one another attractive but didn't want to date. The following makeout session had been the kicker, and now both danced around one another in the most awkward manner their friend had seen. Barry was tired of the childish act, and so now, he was making dinner for four as both Shara and Naruto were being dragged into a meal with him and Iris. They had tried to get out of it, but Flash was persuasive when he put his mind to it. A pity he wasn't a better counselor though, as the meal had been him and Iris trying and failing to get conversations rolling the entire time. After 2 hours even Barry was ready to throw in the towel and saw both of them to the door. The moment it closed behind them both, Naruto and Shara let out a sigh of relief. One that nearly had the eavesdropping Barry scoff. Ungrateful friends. That was Naruto began. Painful, Shara said with a shrug. That's a good word for it. He needs to relax. I mean, it's not like we are hostile with one another. It was just, and we're fine, Naruto said, causing the Thanagarian to stare at him. We have been kind of avoiding each other since then, she admitted. Naruto frowned, but he had to nod. It was true. However, he hadn't avoided Hawkgirl because he disliked the thought of the two of them like that, or even because he wanted that from her. Honestly, he preferred her as a friend more than anything else. I haven't stayed away from you because I disliked kissing you. I was honest when I said you were sexy. I don't want to lead you on. I don't want a relationship like that. Not just from you but at all, Shara explained. I'm the same, I think. When we were hanging out I had a blast, but I guess it's just because you're hot too. It got my mind all twisted up. Naruto shrugged. My hotness got your mind all twisted up? She asked. That is what I said. Naruto nodded sagely. Hawkgirl chuckled at that before shaking her head at the nonsense they were spouting. Alright then, we gotta get back to where we were. You and I having a blast like you said? She grinned. I'm on board. Wanna go on a patrol together, like we did when I was on probation? Naruto asked. I got no plans tonight. Lead the way, kiddo. She agreed. The kiddo thing kinda stings, but I will allow it once every month or so, Naruto teased as they both left. Behind the door, Barry stood with a flat look on his face. All that damn work making dinner, and all they needed was like 5 minutes to talk? God, I love those guys, but they are going to make me go gray or something, he complained. Well, I would say as long as everything worked out it's fine, right? Iris asked from somewhere behind him. He only sighed. Yeah, I guess. Still feels like a waste. Then maybe I can reassure you that it wasn't one, Iris asked as he felt her body press into his back and an arm slide around him to hold on to him. He also felt the thin negligee that acted as the only covering she had on. A broad grin spread across his face at that realization. Maybe you can, he replied, and with a giggle his wife grabbed his hand and led him upstairs toward the bedroom. The past year had been a good one for Naruto. While he still had little information about the mysterious knights, he had come to realize that it was a larger mystery than he first thought. A very familiar and unsettling feeling came to him the more he tried to dig up information about them. Despite that, it truly had been a good year. Oxford Bay was steadily seeing real change. A slew of corrupt police officers and other city employees and even elected officials had been ousted from their positions, and while the city remained far from perfect, Naruto took great pride in his role in making it such a better place. What's more, Naruto had settled into a routine, which was a good thing. He patrolled the city, helped in other locales when needed, and spent most of his free time with his family. After all, they had moved beyond close friends. He dated here and there but never seriously. His lifestyle made sure that he couldn't properly connect with women that didn't participate in the hero life like he did. Hawkgirl helped a lot with that disappointment, mainly because she dealt with the same issue he did. Today both were hanging out rather than doing a basic patrol because they needed a break. Naruto had helped bring down the resurrected Medea from Greek legend the day before, only after she had strung him along in the disguise of a woman that was interested in him. He wasn't all that broken up about it, but it was disappointing and annoying that such a tactic was used on him. Hawkgirl needed a break even more so though. The day before Naruto and she had chosen to hang out, her ex and the man she was still very much caught up on, got married. Part of her was happy for the couple, but most of her was filled with regret, sorrow, and no small amount of fury. She always had been a bit of a hothead. At least while spending time as a civilian with Naruto, Barry, and Iris, she felt like the world wasn't set against her. Both she and Naruto knew to keep the booze away while they were vulnerable, or ecstatic by now. They might have had a couple of close calls in the past. It wasn't anything serious, just repeats of that first celebration that seemed so long ago now. Still, that left her and Naruto here together, alone. Both comforting the other over romantic troubles that really couldn't be helped. His loss. Vixen is nice enough, but he really dropped the ball when it comes to you, Naruto insisted. You're being awfully sweet, but I dropped the ball. Who can expect someone to wait around for nearly a decade without any kind of assurance of getting back together? Shiera said as she picked at the cheese fries the pair of them were sharing. Naruto winced at that. It was a fair point. As much as he was biased toward Shiera, he couldn't really blame Lantern for moving on and trying to find love. That was what they all wanted in the end, right? They love each other. Really love each other. I just don't think that kind of thing is for me, you know? Shiera said as she leaned back in her chair. Don't be ridiculous. I mean, you just haven't met the right one, Naruto urged. You think? I dunno. I've been married before, Naruto. For a long time it was perfect, but then I messed that up too when I met John. The fact that I could throw it away despite being happy with the relationship overall just proves to me that relationships aren't that important. At least to me, she said. The two sat in silence for a little while, finishing up some of their food before Naruto decided to try and uplift her spirits some more. You know, maybe someone in the league would be worth it. Martian Manhunter is a widower, right? He hasn't been dating either, and he could be interested, Naruto suggested. Shiera shot a look full of disbelief his way. Tell me you're kidding. What? John is a great guy, he insisted. Oh yeah, he is. Are you trying to set me up with him because we are both aliens? She asked. No. Come on, you know me better than that, Naruto said. Uh-huh. Well, sorry, but John is a good guy, but he isn't really my type, Shiera said. And what is your type? Naruto asked. Shiera chuckled. Obviously men like John and Kater. Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay, I get it. I'll stop pushing. Thank you, she said with a grin. She waited until Naruto started to take a drink of his soda. I do miss the regular sex that comes with a relationship, though. Naruto choked slightly and glared over at her. She just smiled back at him beautifully. Funny. Just jumping topics then. So you miss having sex, huh? Maybe you should try to actually date rather than just deciding someone isn't your type, Naruto suggested. Yeah? How is that working for you? That dry spell is feeling good right about now then? She asked him. That's not fair. Medea was a sure thing until I found out she was Medea. Naruto mumbled the last in a bit of shame. You nearly have sex with more villainesses than anyone in the league except for Batman, if rumors can be believed, Shiera teased. Yeah, well, I don't really like the idea of the apps. I mean, if I wasn't a hero, sure. But for all I know, I am going to get a month of fun little hookups before someone uses it to ambush me, Naruto complained. Same reason I don't use them. I don't understand why I can't just sit in a bar and find a nice dude to roll around in bed for a night with, she complained. It seemed like everyone had given up on hooking up the old-fashioned way. Yeah, this conversation is weirding me out, Naruto said. Oh, why is that, kiddo? She laughed at the sour face he made from being called kiddo. 'Cause it just makes me more annoyed that I haven't gotten any lately, Naruto groused. Hawkgirl hummed before her shoulders sagged. Ugh, me too. At this point I don't want to date, I just want to do the deed and go to work the next day. Is that really that big of an ask? Naruto nodded along. You know what would be nice? Having the same regular sex I had with Kater but without all the bullshit of being married to Kater, Shiera said. Shiera and Naruto began. An idea pinging in his mind but a bit of worry stopping him from blurting the words out. He didn't need to say it though, as her eyes glued themselves to his own and the pair remained silent for a time as they communicated through small changes in expression alone. It won't change things, she insisted. It might, Naruto replied. It would still be better than this, plus I may have looked online about some people who had done this beforehand, she admitted. Wait, really? Naruto asked. Around your birthday, actually. I debated on it a lot. Decided I couldn't work up the nerve to bring it up out of the blue. She explained. So you have thought about being friends with benefits in the past then? Naruto asked, a bit stunned. I wasn't lying when I told you that I found you sexy. I just thought it was best to drop that and carry on. Shira said. Naruto nodded his head before grinning. I kinda felt the same, but I was worried it would mess up this. Shira giggled at the way he waved his hand back and forth between them. She understood where he was coming from. The abuse of their friendship in exchange for sex was a troubling thought, but desire had a way of making people put their older opinions on things like this to the side in favor of a little bit of hedonism. I mean, we are both adults. As long as we are clear and communicate about everything well, what do we have to worry about? Naruto asked. He paused as Shira suddenly stood up. He thought something was going on until he realized she was fumbling for her keys that she used while masquerading as a normal human. Shira? He asked. I hate sitting around and talking about things. This same conversation will just keep coming up. But we're sober and thinking straight right now. So we should find out right now if this is a good idea, she said before snatching her keys up and turning toward the door. She looked over her shoulder and gave him a smirk after that. Are you coming? That was all he needed, and he was scrambling to his feet after her. Once they got to Shira's apartment, both paused as they realized they didn't really know how far they could take things with one another without the other being made uncomfortable and ruining the entire purpose of this possible agreement. So Shira settled for making them a couple drinks and changing into more comfortable clothes. Naruto hadn't taken his eyes off of her once she had returned to the living room dressed in nothing but a sports bra and one of the smallest pairs of shorts he had seen. At least I can tell you are interested, she teased. Shay, a man would be crazy not to be. Especially if they got to see you walking around like this. I can see the outline of your business through those things, Naruto commented as he motioned toward Shira's crotch area where the rough shape of her body was easy to distinguish. We need to be sure before we go further though, Shira said, now that she was dressed down, though the Thanagarian woman doubted she could honestly force him back out. She could already tell he was getting a bit stiff. I came here with you knowing the whole time, Naruto said simply. No, I mean, you and I both stopped ourselves from going further in the past because we didn't want to be more than friends, Shira said. And we still don't, right? We just want to be friends that also help one another handle a specific itch, Naruto replied. Shira stared into his eyes for a time but slowly felt herself smile. He really was coming at this as just friends and not looking to build more than that. Good, then maybe they really could just help one another out. She leaned forward to begin kissing him. It wasn't deep and passionate. Just hungry and needy. They both wanted this, and soon Shira found herself in Naruto's lap as he unbuttoned his shirt and tossed it away. Her bra was next as his hands simply slid it up and off of her before they began to maul her breasts, and he began kissing her once again. While Naruto's hands were busy playing with her tits, her hands were busy freeing his cock from his pants. She was a bit surprised by his size. The anticipation of taking it was killing her now as she began grinding her wet crotch against his hardening cock. We have condoms in the bedroom, she said as he sucked on one of her. We'll get there, but until then I can just pull out if I get close. You trust me, right? Naruto asked. Shira paused a second but suddenly moaned as she felt her lips brush against his shaft through her shorts. Yes, I trust you, hurry up. She moaned, and suddenly she was on her back as Naruto lifted her legs up to slide her shorts off. I didn't think I felt any panties. He chuckled as he began to bend down to eat her out. No, I said I was ready. Come on, straight in, Shira ordered, and Naruto happily abided her instructions. The sharp inhale she made as he pushed his way into her tight cunt filled his pride a bit, but he didn't linger on that thought long as he began kissing her and rocking his hips up against her to a matching rhythm. He ignored the feeling of her fingernails digging into his back as he fucked her. She didn't break the skin, but her nails left red marks along his back. At that point he became pretty certain that her dry spell had been a bit longer than he thought, and much longer than his own. He was fine with that. He twisted slightly, allowing him to work a different angle that pulled a loud long moan from her. He knew he was hitting her sweet spot the more she shifted from moans to screams of pleasure. He hadn't thought she was a screamer either, but he was happy to set her off. Oh God! Why didn't we just fuck when you joined the league? You've been holding out on me, she shouted as he pounded into her. Naruto laughed at her words. I swear I wouldn't have stopped you. You are so fucking tight. It's like my cock is melting. Naruto grunted as he sank himself deeper into her, and suddenly stiffened as he felt her body try to cling to him. Her didn't want to let him back out, and her legs wrapped around his back. He couldn't hold it anymore, and he lost control. Their mix of cum spilled out around his cock, but by now both were lost in the haze of lust and pleasure. In the morning after, though, they would share a single thought at the sight of the white fluid that had run rather freely from Shaira's shit. The last 4 months had proven to be busy ones for Naruto as well as his friends and the other members of the league. Since he and Shaira had changed the rules for their relationship, they had only managed to spend a total of 7 days together over that course of time, and in the last month they hadn't seen one another at all. Such was the life of a superhero, he supposed. At the very least, he and Barry were getting to spend some time together. There was a game on, and Iris had been happy to plan out an additional spot for supper for their friend. So while Naruto and Barry caught up and watched the game, she continuously stepped in to start up mock arguments with the boys while waiting on the meal to finish cooking. Her favorite had been to ask Naruto if he had done something or other that Barry had while in the league. No matter the younger man's response, Barry always took it as a challenge to one-up his younger friend, intent on maintaining the older brother or mentor spot in the blonde's life. "I'm telling you, 12 bank robberies in one day, kid. All stopped by yours truly with no help from the rest of the league at all," Flash boasted. "Barry, there's only like 10 banks in the entire city," Naruto groused, getting a snort from his friend. "There are more than you think. Lots of smaller branches and a bunch of little ones in the suburbs count too. Actually, those get hit more often than the big ones, now that I think about it. Oh. Plus, I kid you not, 3 different crews hit one bank at the same time," Barry said with a grin. "That's just one bank robbery then," Naruto pointed out with a dull expression. "Pfft, nah, 3 separate crews, 3 separate robberies," Flash insisted. "Man, whatever." Naruto rolled his eyes, getting giggles from his buddy's wife who enjoyed the play fighting the two liked to get into. Alright, you two. That's enough. Get washed up," and Iris began before stopping to roll her eyes as her husband disappeared in a flash and reappeared after washing his hands, and Naruto's hand briefly coated themselves in red energy, as any kind of foreign molecule was purged from his skin. "Superpowers," she sighed with a small smile. "So what are we eating anyway?" Barry asked as the two men followed her into the kitchen. "Just some classics. Ham steaks and potatoes. Easy and filling," she replied as they all sat down around the table. "Thanks for making something for me too, Iris. I gotta say I haven't had a chance to eat with you guys or any of the others of our friends in way too long," Naruto said as he began cutting at his food. "It's the same for us. You folks in the league have been so busy lately. I swear if we didn't sleep in the same bed I wouldn't see Barry at all these days." "Yeah, sorry hun. We're trying to recruit some other new members into the organization to give us a little more breathing room, but it's taking time. Everybody has to get vetted, and that's part of why yours truly has been stuck up in the watchtower so much lately," Barry said with a small frown, though it faded away as his wife softly gripped his hand reassuringly. She understood. "Ugh, don't remind me of all the background nonsense we have been doing. It's ridiculous the level of detail we put into these things. When I was joining, it felt like all I had to do was get Barry's approval, then Shaira's, and I was in." Barry snorted. "'Cause that is what happened. Even after all that stuff with the Thanagrian's Hawkgirl and I are both in the first 7. You gotta pass on a lot of stuff, which considering the craziness of your background is something you should definitely thank me for more often." "Actually, Naruto, speaking of Shaira, how is she? I haven't seen her in so long, and you're pretty much the only one from the league that has had a chance to visit in a couple of months," Iris asked as both she and Naruto ignored Barry's request for some more thanks in getting the blonde into the league. "Honestly, I couldn't tell you. Good, I guess. Besides a few phone calls or messages, we don't even get a chance to talk at the moment. I think her civilian life is keeping her swamped somehow because she keeps taking some time off from the league. I tried to swing by to visit her the other day when I had a little time, but she told me she was at an appointment. Our schedules have been completely opposite of one another for the last month or so," Naruto said, a bit depressed at that fact. Barry snorted at that though. "I bet that sucks. The hand isn't quite living up to Hawkgirl's level, I imagine." "Barry!" Iris pretended to scold him. "We shouldn't tease him about a dry spell." Naruto simply stared at the both of them dully before blinking when he heard his phone chime in his pocket. As he checked the message, he couldn't help but chuckle lightly. "Speak of the devil. She has the night off and says she needs to talk to me about something urgent. Says she couldn't find me at my apartment, and so she is coming to see me here. Wants to talk to you too, I guess, Iris," Naruto said slowly. It was a bit odd. Obviously, he wasn't the only one to notice either, as both Iris and Barry shared a brief look with their younger friend. This out-of-the-blue type of things was kind of out of character for the Thanagrian woman. Did she say when Iris began to ask only for the doorbell to ring? Wow, Barry said in surprise. I'll get it then, Naruto said with a shrug as he stood. And I'll set another place at the table. It'll be nice to catch up before you two slink off home to do Lord knows what, Iris teased. Naruto snorted a small bout of laughter as he moved over to the door. He opened it up and wasn't disappointed by the sight of Shira. He knew she had been coming after all, so he shouldn't have been surprised by her being on the other side of the door. He was surprised though because there was a very obvious bulge added to the front of his friend. It took a very brief moment for his mind to essentially restart as his eyes slowly moved up from her stomach to her face. Shira slowly nodded as she locked eyes with him. What you needed to talk about? He asked. She just stared at him until he stepped out of her way and let her into Barry and Iris' living room. Shira, it's great to oh shit. No way, Barry said before very rapidly moving his head back and forth to look between the other two heroes. Hey, what's going on? Iris asked as she joined them, wondering why they were taking so long to come back to the dining room. Like the other two, she paused and stared at the woman's stomach. Oh, you two idiots, Iris sighed out. Well, get in here. Let's talk after we eat. I think it's going to be a long conversation. Shira sighed. It was a mix of relief and disappointment. Most expectant mothers had a little celebration when they told people they were expecting. Most of them were married and trying for kids though. She doubted most of them had all the baggage of the league and heroics to deal with on top of the child too. The meal was uncomfortable. Primarily due to the scathing looks Iris was giving her friends and the childish excitement and humor that Barry was practically oozing. So Iris began with a clear insistence that the two friends with benefits actually speak now that the meal was over with. How, did this happen? If I remember, we always used protection, right? Naruto said a bit uncomfortably. Except for the first time. You know, trust me. Remember that? Shira said with a pointed look. Oh, yeah, but didn't you get the Plan B stuff handled? Naruto asked. As it turns out, Thanagrians and humans might be similar enough to have children, but those pills are a lot less effective for me, she explained. Ah, Naruto said with a nod. Figures that her body had some kind of fucking immunity to shit like that. That appointment a little while back, he began. I thought about taking care of it, but I couldn't do it, she admitted. The group fell quiet after that. The weight of the fact that Shira was really pregnant and going to have a baby was truly settling in. More so for Naruto, the fact that he was going to be a father was suddenly dropped on him. He didn't know what to do all of a sudden. He didn't even know what a father was supposed to really act like. Not unless they were supposed to act like the ones he saw on TV and in movies. He shook his head trying to formulate words but clearly too overwhelmed by his own thoughts to do so. His stammering stopped as he jolted slightly. Shira had calmly placed a hand on his own and Naruto couldn't help but blink at her in confusion and worry, even as she tried to calm him down. Relax. I didn't come here to demand you take responsibility or anything. I can handle this fine on my own, Shira said. Naruto's eyes darkened and he pushed his plate away from him slowly. He may have been shocked by all this, but this was his kid they were talking about. His kid. That was such a weird thing to think about. Oh, I don't mean I don't want you coming around. I just mean you don't need to worry about this changing things, Shira said. Sorry you two, but I'm pretty sure this is going to change everything, Iris said. Either way, I'm going to be there. We might not be traditional parents, or even a couple, but it's going to be fine. Naruto finally managed to regain his footing and speak. If you two need a hand, we'll be here to help, Barry said happily. Of course. Iris smiled, though she was most definitely not going to let either forget it was their idiocy that made them both surprise parents. I'm so happy to hear that from all three of you. I was stressing about hatching this little one all on my own, Shira said with a smile, getting a couple of chuckles although Naruto paled dramatically. Hatch? He stammered. The two women shared a conspiratorial glance before fighting back grins. Yes, hatch. I am a Thanagrian after all, Shira said slyly. Yeah, but Naruto blew out a big sigh before running a hand through his hair. This is going to be crazy, Barry said as he dug back into his meal. Watchtower duty was boring as boring could be. Naruto supposed that was why it was on a rotation. Nobody wanted to do it. It sucks sitting up in space gathering all the alerts and warnings about emergencies across the globe only to have to dispatch others to go and deal with it. At least he was lucky enough to draw his turn with Flash once again. The pair of them could make the long shift seem to pass by far quicker, even if some of the others disliked how carefree they seemed to take the job. That was what Naruto expected the issue to be when the stern-faced Green Lantern John Stewart made his way up the stairs toward the control station that Naruto sat at. Flash had left to get himself and Naruto something to eat and drink from the commissary while Naruto continued to monitor the stations. Sadly, for all his speed, Flash couldn't make a microwave work faster or even speed up the time it took to fill up a cup. Lantern. Naruto greeted evenly, already knowing the man was in a sour mood just by the look on his face. Scion. The man bit out harshly, causing Naruto to silently bristle in anticipation for an argument. What's up? He asked the larger man. A lot of people in the tower have been talking lately about some things that I never thought I would have to worry about. Then again, with you and Flash, I should have known better, Stewart said. Oh yeah? Naruto asked. Yeah. You shouldn't be up here. It was clear from the start that you are too inexperienced and childish to fit in with the League. You need to learn to take responsibility for the things. Wow, tell me how you really feel, Lantern. Actually no, why don't you just walk off and keep it to yourself? Naruto asked sharply as he stood up. Nearby, several other members of the League stopped the small chatter of conversations that they were having and turned their attention to the two men squaring off before one another. Naruto was a bit confused, being as he hadn't really expected this kind of attitude from the man over the way he and Flash handled monitor duty. As he locked eyes with the eerie glowing green of his fellow Justice League member, though, Naruto realized that it wasn't the relaxed method of handling monitor duty that had pissed his comrade off so badly. Wait, is this about Shara? Naruto asked, almost as much to himself as to the lantern. John's green eyes seemed to flash brighter than normal as the man pushed further up into the monitor station to close the distance between him and Naruto. The magician probably would have been incredibly intimidated if he was a mostly normal individual. He, like most of those in the League, was far from that, and having a middle-aged man try to push into his personal space managed only to make him uncomfortable, and not for any of the reasons that the Green Lantern had wanted it to. Now both stood barely 6 inches apart, and Naruto felt his own blood beginning to boil at the actions of the usually prim and proper soldier. Needless to say, he was losing what respect he still had for the man. After the situation with Shara, he had been a bit stunned the man hadn't gone after her all those years ago, as even now Naruto knew she had feelings for the man. Still, that wasn't his problem or his business. What the lantern was involving himself into was, though. You're damn right it's about Shara. You couldn't even take responsibility. Just running around like an idiotic brat who can't face the consequences of his actions. Stewart growled. You really need to back the hell up, old man. Ain't your business anyway, right? Mine and Shira's choices have nothing to do with you, Naruto replied flatly. Just because she and I aren't together like we once were doesn't mean I don't care about her. You taking advantage of her like you did, really? Take advantage of her? Man, you must really not know her at all. Naruto snorted in laughter right in the lantern's face. I know her better than you ever will, kid, he snarled. I doubt that. I mean, I explored some things she told me you were a little too afraid to try, Naruto said with a menacing grin. John's eyes flashed again, and Naruto could tell he was barely restraining himself from reaching out after Naruto. As a member of the League, he really should try to de-escalate things at this point. He wasn't exactly known for his ability in such a task, though. Along with that, the Green Lantern had really pressed his buttons and pissed him off, so Naruto was a little too keen on pushing further. You disgust me, Scion. Talking about the mother of your child like that, John growled. Yeah, well, the same could be said for you. Lusting after your ex when you're married and pitching a fit because she decided to move on from you finally. Moved on? Hardly. You two had a one-night stand and you won't even help with the John began, only to frown even deeper as Naruto burst out laughing. Is that what you think happened? You stupid oversized nightlight, it wasn't a one-night stand. See, she and I have this agreement. I've tapped that more times than you and her ex-husband did combined. She's got my bun in that oven too, but that's what really has you mad, isn't it? The fact that she has someone else's child and is excited by the idea of raising it. Can't handle that she ain't having your baby. Why don't you go back to your wife and tell her what's bothering you so much rather than trying to act all tough with me? Naruto asked, grinning as Stewart cocked back a fist to hit him, only for it to stop as Flash stood behind him with a very serious expression on his face. Enough. You two are making a stupid scene. That's kind of my gig. Why don't you go home, Lantern? Naruto and I have a long shift of monitoring left to do, and I'm sure you want to tell your wife your version of this little spat before the rumor mill hits her," Barry said, motioning toward the large collection of gossiping League members below, all watching carefully and having obviously been ready to intervene if a fight broke out. Green Lantern grunted and yanked his arm free of Flash's grasp before storming off toward the hangar. As much as he disliked the idea, he had to admit getting ahead of whatever rumor spun up from the argument was a good idea if he didn't want his wife putting him on the couch. Flash watched him go before turning to look at Naruto with a flat expression. "You are so much more trouble than you are worth. Be happy you managed to find yourself as my little brother, or I'd leave you to the green glowing wolves." "Ah gee, thanks Barry, you really know how to make it all better. Seriously though, that idiot should know better. I am not about to bend over for him just cause he is a founder. Acting like Shara is his wife or girlfriend or something, or like she wasn't just as much a part of making the kid as I was," Naruto complained as he turned his attention back to the monitors. Barry sighed as he plopped down beside Naruto and offered him the open bag of popcorn. "It's not fair, but at least for a while you both are going to be dealing with people who have way too much interest in your business. Be ready for lectures from half of the older members of the league about responsibility, and another lecture from the women about either taking advantage of Hawkwoman or needing to step up and be a father or whatever," Barry said. "Ugh. How does anyone even come to the conclusion I took advantage of her anyway? I mean, she's like 50-something, Naruto said, causing Barry to blink. "I think it's cause she looks like she is in her 20s or 30s and you look a little old for your age, no offense." "None taken, I think," Naruto replied as he popped a handful of popcorn into his mouth. As the pair continued to banter and eat, the alarms on the monitors began to suddenly go off, and both had to resign themselves to not participate in the daring rescue of the town of Morrisburg, Missouri from a freak earthquake caused by an unauthorized mining operation nearby. Back to the boring part of hero work. It was nice to go on patrol with a friend from time to time. Although as far as friends went, Naruto had to admit his current crime-fighting associate was a bit more of an acquaintance than a true friend. If only because both of them were pressed into enjoying extremely busy schedules. Despite their busy schedules, however, the both of them had roughly a decade separating them from the next youngest member of their organization, so it was a bit natural that Scion and Black Canary, or as they had steadily come to know one another, Naruto and Dinah, would gravitate toward one another. It didn't hurt that they rather easily complemented one another in a fight. Dinah, despite her canary cry, was primarily a close-range or more specifically hand-to-hand fighter. Naruto was far and above a typical thug when it came to a fight, but almost in complete contrast to his fellow blonde, he was a ranged fighter capable of practically warping reality to his advantage and keeping most fights short and sweet. The few that managed to get around Naruto's magic when on patrol with Dinah didn't last long against her martial arts training. Something both of them could tell outstripped Naruto's own skill in a fight. "I'm not trying to tell you that your magic won't pretty much win every fight," Dinah said as the pair of heroes rested on a rooftop. Naruto listened as she spoke only briefly, eyeing her figure as she cocked her hips to the side with a hand resting on her side and an exasperated look on her face. "Your powers are pretty much going to hand every fight to you, but you still picked up some hand-to-hand skills along the road. You know that people can and will find a way around your abilities, then it's down to good old-fashioned hand-to-hand action, and you, my friend, are lacking in that department. You need some serious fine-tuning. More training or sparring, whatever you want to call it." "Maybe, but like you said, I have had training with it in the past, and it's just a backup," Naruto replied as he turned away from her to look out over the city. The two heroes were jointly patrolling Washington, D.C. tonight. A few important diplomats from the Middle East were visiting the White House for a mediated talk over rights to a contested border region, but everything seemed to surprisingly be going smoothly. Naruto did enjoy seeing the look of the city, though, as he stared over the rooftop toward the distant monuments. "So? Won't you be pretty annoyed if someone manages to knock you around because you didn't listen to me?" Dinah asked, getting Naruto to chuckle at the blatant attempt to bait him into cooperating. "Alright, still I don't exactly have someone I can just badger into training me. Folks know my face and I can't see myself blanking memories over and over again to get training being a good idea," Naruto grumbled. "Whoa, wait, what is that about memories?" she asked. "Huh. Nothing." Naruto waved her off, though Dinah rolled her eyes and returned to the subject at hand. "You don't have anybody at all to help with your training? Where did you pick up the stuff you already know then?" Naruto chewed at his lip in thought as he eyed the woman for a moment. He weighed the idea of telling her a bit more about his life prior to the League versus simply telling her to mind her own business. Only a handful of others knew his story: Barry, Shara, undoubtedly the Batman. It made telling Canary a little less daunting, but opening that door wasn't easy still. Maybe adding some dark humor could help brush past it. He thought to himself. Just the government. They wanted a child super soldier, so a little hand-to-hand was important to them, I guess. Though it was pretty much all stuff to get some distance from an opponent and blast them with some magic or something. He said, mentally grimacing as his own bitterness toward that time period killed any base attempt at even dark humor and made his words come out harsh and clear. Dinah shifted slightly as she stared at her colleague in worry. Obviously, she had managed to push his buttons a little too much. She had some ideas to move past that and smooth their conversation out, though. Well, what if I taught you some things? You could come down to the gym with me and we can work on it, she asked. Naruto perked up at that. Dinah was fun to spend time around, but more than that, she was one of the best martial artists in the league. A lot of the others relied on their powers to win, but Dinah relied on her training and skill. Something he wanted to be able to fall back on if push came to shove. Sounds good to me. I gotta make sure it's a time when I'm not either doing this or helping Shara around. She's really getting close to popping now, Naruto said with a soft smile. Canary didn't really share his grin. If anything, she seemed to be upset, but not at him. You really impress me with how you are handling things with her, Dinah. Thanks, I just hope I'm a good dad to the kid when they are here. Kind of nervous about that, since the closest I remember having of a father figure was Kent, and he has at most been like a grandfather or something, Naruto happily replied with a slight blush. I think you are off to a good start. It's really mature of you to be stepping up like you despite everything, she replied with a warm smile. Naruto paused at that, though. What do you mean? He asked. Oh, well, I can't help but think you're pretty young to be a parent, she commented. I am only 2 years younger than you, though, Naruto replied. Yeah, but I don't have a kid, she pointed out. Alright, fair point. Still, plenty of people my age have had children before. Not exactly pioneering a new path in life with this whole thing. Maybe, but they don't usually have a baby with someone so much older and more experienced than them. Canary, what exactly are you trying to dance around telling me? Naruto said a bit more harshly than he had intended. I just feel like Hawkwoman took advantage of you being a young guy that she mentored for a while and used you to get back at Lantern, or maybe just to have a kid or something. The point is, she took advantage of you, and I feel that it's... I'm gonna stop you there. You don't really have room to talk on that front. What is that supposed to mean? She demanded, a bit of anger bleeding into her voice. Naruto wasn't about to stop, though. Look, I don't want to fight with you. But be honest. Don't you feel like your situation with Arrow is a bit worse than mine with Shara? At least she always treated me with respect and as an equal. He talks down to you and acts like you're a pet half the time, Naruto said. He wasn't about to back down. It felt a bit odd, but in a way he felt defensive of the mother of his soon-to-be-born child, and he also had some silent opinions of the league's premier archer as well. They're called pet names, and maybe you wouldn't understand. Ollie and I have something different than you and her did, she insisted. Yeah, maybe. Whatever. Like I said, I don't want to fight with you. Especially being as you're the only one my age in the club, he said, turning his eyes away from her. Dinah sighed but nodded. Agreed. Besides, it would take a lot more than an argument about love lives to end a decent friendship for me. She smiled his way, happily confirming that they were friends after all. As Naruto was about to respond, Dinah's phone chimed and she answered it. Naruto could just barely make out the voice calling her pretty bird and withheld a grimace. Perhaps it was just him, but he felt there was a thin line between pet names and pet names. One that green arrow blurred too much for him. Hey Naruto, I gotta go. Something came up back home, but I'll text you so we can set up a time to head to the gym. You need some work. Dinah grinned at him and Naruto returned the smile happily. Sounds good. I'm gonna sweep the downtown area one more time then head home myself, Naruto said as he waved goodbye, and both heroes, and now for sure friends, parted ways. That is not an egg, Naruto murmured softly as he allowed his hand to be crushed to a fine powder by the excessively strong woman giving birth beside him. Of course it's not an egg, you idiot! She howled at him, red-faced. He was briefly tempted to point out the only reason he thought that it might be was because for the last several months she and Iris had gone out of their way to convince him that the Nagrians were so different internally that their women did in fact lay eggs. Seeing what very much was not an egg being forced from the body of the woman was a bit more than he could really bear. It's almost there, Shara, keep pushing, the medical staff of the tower said as they worked. Ugh, get him out of me already, damn it, she cried and applied more pressure to Naruto's hand. The young blonde began to apply magic to his hand to stop the damage and pain, but the sudden glare and knowing look that she sent him caused him to stop. She clearly wanted him to suffer along with her, if only a small bit in comparison. What a spiteful woman his friend was. With one last loud cry, Shiera managed to complete the supposedly beautiful act of giving birth. Naruto had to wonder what psychotic fool considered anything about this situation beautiful. At least until he watched as the tiny screaming swaddled child was carefully set into the arms of its exhausted mother. It soon stopped crying and eased into the comfort of its loving mother's embrace. With his hand free and most of the staff out of the way, Naruto could more freely move about the room, but instead he was frozen in place. Eyes locked on the form of the little child. His little child. His son. Holy shit. It finally sank in for him. Watch your mouth around him. Shiera tiredly scolded as she held her baby and never stopped staring into his little eyes. Oh right, sorry. Just holy shit. Naruto mumbled, causing Shiera to sigh. Do you want to hold him? She asked softly, looking at the father of her son. She almost laughed at the pale and surprisingly timid-looking hero before her. Nothing like his normal demeanor. Yeah. I do, he said as a bit of color returned to his skin and he stepped forward to pick up the little bundle. Be careful of his head, she said as she gently passed him off. Naruto nodded, though his eyes never left the tiny little package in his arms. A grin quickly began to spread on his face as the newborn simply stared up at him. Blue eyes meeting blue eyes. What do we name him? Shiera asked as she watched the new father and son. Naruto swayed slightly as if rocking the child with his movements, and the peaceful little baby quickly began to fall asleep in his father's arms. I dunno. Naruto stammered, staring at the child in his hands. At least he didn't for a moment, then it struck him almost immediately. He hadn't really thought of baby names, but now in this instant he could only think of one real mentor. A man he could consider fatherly, or perhaps rather grandfatherly to him. Shiera, what about Kent? He asked quietly. The woman blinked but smiled softly as she held out her arms for the baby. As she took him into her arms and looked over his peaceful features. Kent, she whispered quietly. It was a good name and Shiera knew well enough where it came from. Naruto continued to stare at the sight of little Kent, his own real blood family. It was something he couldn't quite understand. The feeling he had as he looked at the boy. He didn't know that this was perhaps the happiest day of his life so far, though. Moving forward. Naruto pouted slightly, getting Kent and Zatara both to roll their eyes at the younger of their little trio. Kent twitched a finger, and one of the shelved books levitated for a moment before lightly swatting the young man on the back of the head. Stop acting childish. You came to Zatara and myself because you wanted an answer, and we gave it, Kent said seriously in that grandfatherly tone he had perfected. You should be focused on doing your job and caring for little Ken, my friend. Nothing good will come of pursuing the knights, Zatara added. So that's it. We just turn a blind eye to paramilitary, anti-magical, knights with advanced tech, waging a war under our noses? Naruto asked reproachfully. No, we never said that. The organization is awfully cagey and hard to pin down, but Zatara and I both have some contacts we can get a hold of to figure a bit more out about what they have been up to. We are just saying that perhaps you should accept the dead end you have come across. Our fellow magically gifted people and the knights have had an agreement for a long time. It works for the most part, Kent explained. For the most part, Naruto scoffed. Kent only sighed at the bullheadedness that Naruto was showing. We will continue to look into their involvement with things, Naruto. However, our largest concern remains this herald that repeatedly confronts you. He also gave you your hero work moniker, yes? Zatara asked. Naruto grumbled for a moment before shrugging as if to say, what can you do? It was more Flash that did that. Harry kept bellowing about Scion this, Scion that, or whatever. Flash thought that it made a good name, Naruto explained. Well, I suppose he is right. However, I can't help but feel some worry in regards to that title as well as this demon specifically, Zatara continued. You and I both. I don't really get why he is targeting me, but I know it's connected to well, Naruto said before letting the crackling red power to pulse over his hand as the three men watched. Undoubtedly. Still, we all know terrifyingly little about the true extent of how all this is connected. Zatara eyed the young man's hand both with discomfort and fascination. So, Kent said, stepping forward slightly, almost between Naruto and Zatara. Zatara will check with his contacts regarding the organization and what can be done to curb any overreach they may make. Meanwhile, I will return to trying to learn more about your gifts and your origins. Kent said before gently gripping Naruto's shoulder. As Zatara said, perhaps you should go and visit the little me. A child grows much quicker than any new parent is ever prepared for. Don't miss time you will never get back. Kent insisted. Naruto chuckled but nodded. He didn't need to be told twice to go and visit his son. A quick spell later, and he found himself standing in Shira's living room. His son babbled and reached out toward him while Shira shot him a deadly glare. I thought we talked about you teleporting into my house unannounced, she stated flatly. Right, my bad. He chuckled nervously. Whatever. Here. I am going to take a bath so you can watch your son, she said as she handed over the child and spun toward the stairs. Alright, okay. That's fine, Naruto said with a smile before he began making faces that caused little Kent to burble and giggle as all happy infants did. He also has a dirty diaper. Change him, she said before disappearing upstairs. Right, Naruto replied quite less enthusiastically than he did a moment ago. Still, once he had changed little Kent, he could enjoy some time with his kid. It was going to be a pretty damn good day. All things considered, it was shaping up to be a pretty shitty day. In the last couple of months, Naruto has struggled to find any sort of lead regarding either the nights or origins of his powers. Slowly, he had come to realize that Kent was holding out on him. There was something he wasn't telling him, and after today, he had become even more certain of it. After all, the older man had essentially blatantly told him so in the same breath he told him to forget it. According to Kent, he couldn't bring a family he never had back, and even if he did, he didn't know them, or what would happen if he did. Naruto couldn't understand why the old man was being so adamant about that. He wasn't trying to resurrect the dead. He just wanted to remember anything more than the echoes of explosions, a pair of corpses, and a horrific face stretched and bloody beyond human ability. Was that truly such a risk? Eventually, Naruto had decided to go around Kent and to someone he would rather not have to. Especially being as he knew it would cost him something in the long run. At least he knew it wouldn't cost him too terribly. As much as he had his own reasons to not truly enjoy the company of Batman, he knew he was one of the most rigorous in holding his personal moral code. He still wasn't exactly pleased to owe Batman a favor. He did work ridiculously fast, though, if the call he was getting was what he expected. Batman? He asked as he answered the communicator. It was a simple-looking though incredibly complex little device that kept the League's communications secure. Scion, I have something. It isn't much to go on yet, but it is something, Batman's gruff voice replied. Something is better than the nothing I had, Naruto said. Maybe, Batman simply said before sending the small attached document. I got it, thanks, Naruto replied. Good. I will poke around whenever I have time. Unfortunately, I have some prior engagements, Batman said. I get it. Really appreciate it, though, Naruto said as he opened the document Batman had sent him. The Dark Knight said nothing more as he ended the call. Naruto pored over what little information that Batman could give him. It was as he had been told. Not really much. An official copy of his birth certificate, which he was kind of shocked still existed at all. Listed in the parents' spots were his mother and father's names, Minato and Kushina. He knew he had documents pertaining to him at one point and that he was from Ridgefield. The address for his parents' home was even listed on the paperwork, but he had never really looked into it too much, and he had never actually seen his birth certificate before. Why did Batman send me this, though? How is it connected to Naruto? Trailed off as he began reading some of the other bits and pieces sent with the document. The next piece was an interoffice memo written by one director, Hector Smythe. Batman had left a note promising more on the director later. At the moment, though, Smythe's writings regarding Naruto, or Recruit Namikaze as he was referred to, detailed the extra interest in him specifically. His powers were slightly different and more potent than the other subjects, and at times seemed to have a will of their own even. That wasn't including the information that he mentioned about Ridgefield. The massacre wasn't a government hit job. Naruto had believed so for years now, ever since he recalled bits and pieces of that last night with his parents. Instead, it seemed the organization had been responsible the Knights of Eternity. The memo went on to insist on gathering a team to bring Naruto out to Ridgefield, or whatever was left of it, and try to find any sort of resonance or clue through Naruto's abilities. Not a terrible idea, he thought to himself. He put the information he had gotten away before answering a call from Black Canary. Checking the time, he cursed slightly. Just as Dinah had offered, Naruto had taken her up on her suggestion to work on his hand-to-hand with her. Sometimes they just worked out in the gym together, but he had to admit they had definitely become solid friends by now. Ero didn't seem exactly thrilled, but Naruto was happy he wasn't getting the overbearing boyfriend approach from the guy either. He flipped the slide to answer his phone. Hello? Hey, forget something? Dinah's somewhat annoyed voice replied. Heh, when I saw you were calling I remembered pretty fast. I'll grab my stuff and be there quick, just make sure the coast is clear and I can pop out in the bathroom. Naruto replied. Teleportation is so unfair. Looks clear though, only like 2 other people in the gym today, and they are on the other side of the building. She replied. Huh, not usually that quiet this time of day, Naruto said. There's a marathon in town. Most of the members are either participating or helping organize it. I like it better when things are empty anyway, she said. Less stairs? He asked. Yeah, she scoffed. Woman acts like I don't have that same problem. Naruto chuckled as he opened up the portal. Please, you adore that kind of thing. You're in luck too. The other 2 are Lola and her sister. They aren't going to get anything done once they see you, Dinah pointed out, noticing the change in sound as Naruto stepped into the bathroom. Well, at least they don't come over and interrupt us. All they do is stare at my ass, Naruto joked before hanging up and stepping out of the bathroom door in front of Dinah, who slipped her phone back into her gym bag. Naruto had to make sure not to go too much on his colleague's appearance. Her athletic wear was pretty hard to ignore though. A snug sports bra and very tight shorts that showed off just a little bit of her ass cheeks at the bottom. Good thing there aren't any other guys here today. You would be getting approached every 5 minutes. Seriously, all of your pants in the laundry or something, decided to wear some poor little kid's shorts, he taunted. Nope, I just knew the gym would mostly be empty so I can wear my favorite workout clothes for a change. Why? Does it bother you? She cheekily asked. Naruto rolled his eyes before stripping off his shirt and causing the 2 women nearby to quietly pause their stretching. Like clockwork, Canary scoffed before motioning toward the treadmills. Heh, jealousy looks terrible on you, Naruto joked before making his way to his own treadmill and starting his warm-up. The workout ran a little long. They decided to get in some extra sparring, or rather Canary had. He had figured out pretty easily that something was bothering her, but he had also easily figured out that it concerned Green Arrow. The 2 of them had more or less developed an unwritten rule during their friendship that they wouldn't bring up either Oliver or Shiera. Sure, they might ask how they were doing, but both knew that the other disapproved of the relationship they had with the other. Naruto hadn't brought up his point about how Oliver spoke to Dinah since the first time, but then again he didn't really need to know that. It had been clearly pointed out to her, and now at the worst times her friend's words crawled into her head. Similarly, Dinah didn't press on the relationship Naruto had with the mother of his child. As it stood though, Naruto and Shiera hadn't walked down that path since Kent had been born. Any time they spent together almost entirely revolved around the little boy too. Whatever was going on between Green Arrow and Black Canary had taken a toll on Naruto though. The blonde could be pretty vicious in the ring, and Naruto might have been gifted and trained to a degree, but Canary relied much more heavily on martial arts, and would always have an advantage of training over Naruto. Whatever was eating at her meant he was spending some time nursing a fat lip and some bruising afterward. At least he was starting to get a better hand at reading an opponent's movements. Either that or Canary was trying to make him feel better about being so easy for her to crush in hand-to-hand. It stung his ego a little, considering he was typically such a big threat in a fight with his magic. It would just make him better in the long run though. Naruto caught a quick shower before snapping his fingers to dry his body and change into his hero uniform. Next he pictured an area near Cheyenne, Wyoming, and stepped through the opening in his wall and out into a long abandoned barn. Let's see, north from here I think. Let's see what we can see, he mumbled to himself before taking off to fly toward the old remains of Ridgefield. It took a little time. Naruto wasn't going all out, and Wyoming was a pretty sizable state to begin with. Gradually the terrain became a bit hillier, and he began following a river below him. It was a narrow, muddy thing that occasionally had a small concrete or metal bridge across it. A handful of farmers and their kids excitedly waved up at him as he would pass by, so he would wave back and occasionally use a little magic to swirl some clouds into fun designs. The farms seemed to drop away suddenly though. That is to say, inhabited farms. The empty husks of old farmhouses and barns as well as overgrown fields replaced the best orderly crops being grown. He passed over a bridge that looked ready to collapse and a smattering of country homes that were falling in. The whole community. Not just the town itself. Naruto mumbled as he began to near Ridgefield proper. The town was in bad shape. Large parts of the northern and western portions of the town were cratered, and what still stood could hardly still be considered buildings. The rest of the town was less destroyed, but time and lack of maintenance had ensured these buildings too were beginning to sag and collapse. Naruto circled Ridgefield a couple of times before settling down onto what appeared like Main Street. Storefronts and other 2- or 3-story brick buildings stood on either side of the pockmarked and cracking road. Many of them were blackened by fire sometime in the past, and not one still had glass in the windows. It almost looked like something out of a war documentary showing the aftermath of combat. The only major differences were the lack of bodies and overgrowth that had taken over. Weeds grew through the cracks in the roads and sidewalks, and a couple trees had begun growing through the most severely burned buildings. "These nights don't fuck around," Naruto grumbled as he gingerly touched a wall pockmarked in bullet holes and scorched with flame. The steady, even spacing made it clear that it hadn't been stray gunfire that marked this wall but a series of single shots. He sucked at his teeth before turning down one of the roads and making his way toward the address that he couldn't help but memorize. Unfortunately, there wasn't much to look at. Most of the first floor had been gutted by some explosion, and the yard was a tall mess of weeds and young trees that tangled up with the power lines overhead. There was a porch swing that had been thrown from its chains and now laid overturned in the front yard. White paint blackened by smoke and peeled off. He could just barely recall it, being held between his mother and father, who seemed more like blurry-colored silhouettes than actual people. The facade of the house had clearly once been a warm and cozy little place. It wasn't much to look at now compared to that, though. The layer of old glass and dirt crackled and crunched beneath his feet as he stepped onto the concrete front steps. The porch was small, and some old potted plants had long since died there. The front door was gone. Naruto imagined it was somewhere in the thicket that had once been a front yard. Beside it sat the numbers confirming the address, as well as 3 tiny wooden figures painted by a child. He wished he could recall painting them. Even after cleaning off the grime to reveal the faded colors of the 2 yellow and 1 red figurines, his mind drew a blank. Still, he slipped them into a pocket and pressed on into the house. An odd sensation came over him as he passed the threshold, and he paused to take in what would have been the living room of the small house. Shredded remains of furniture lay strewn about, and wall ornaments were burnt onto the walls. He imagined the floor had once been carpet, but squishy wood was all that still sat beneath his feet. The rest of the first floor was in much the same shape. The stairs were damaged but usable, though. Carefully he continued up to the second floor. It was far less damaged than the first floor, though smoke and fire hadn't left it untouched. The first room on the second floor that he found was a bathroom. Completely ruined as it was, he could see 3 disgusting towels that hung in descending order: dad, mom, baby. On the sink 3 toothbrushes, color-coded yellow, red, and orange, sat in a cup. The hallway upstairs was narrow, and had some weakened spots in the floor. Its once white walls were either burned black or aged to a disgusting tan color. A few broken pictures hung along the way, however one at the far back end of the hall remained completely intact. Black marks from smoke seemed to bend around it, and dirt and filth seemed to avoid it entirely. Naruto could feel the tiny trace of magic placed on the framed photo. It was withering away, just barely keeping the family portrait held behind the glass safe. Naruto stared at the picture of himself and his parents when he was just a little older than his own son was now. He felt like he was supposed to be tearing up, but no tears welled up in his eyes. Instead, he felt a small smile crawl onto his face. The family stood there. A young blond man in his early 20s wrapping one arm around a red-headed woman of similar age and holding an infant in the other. They stood out in front of the house Naruto currently stood in. It really had been a cozy little place once. They all smiled. Even the baby. Happy and healthy as could be. He let his power quickly run over the photo, breaking the spell one of his parents had placed on it. The fact that it still worked when most of the others in the house had sputtered out over the years was considerable luck, but Naruto couldn't help but be happier for it. With a few more spells, he had the picture stored away in his unnaturally deep pockets. With the hall handled, he turned to the next room. The first of 2 bedrooms. A tiny one with a small crib-like bed and some moldy toys. The room itself was utterly untouched by fire or time. Serious amounts of spell work cast onto the walls and even more onto the little bed. The knowledge of such wards being in place again warmed his heart just as the picture had. It was clear he had been loved. Sadly, he couldn't recall much in the room itself. No pictures hung here, just toys and some cartoonish art for the eyes of a child. He stared for a bit before turning to the last room in the house. Similarly to the kids' room, this bedroom was in pretty decent shape compared to the rest of the house. A broken window with a bird's nest built just inside reminded him of the state of the rest of the building, though. Rotten clothes were scattered on the floor, likely strewn about in the last panicked moments of a desperate man and his wife as they tried to flee. A single large scorch mark sat on one wall. tried to teleport. The organization stopped them somehow though, Naruto said as a finger slid across the sooty residue on the wall. He sighed before deciding on a final check of the house using a spell. His next stop was already planned as well. The town hall had been battered but still standing with a rough barricade in place outside it. Likely the last of the people of Ridgefield had tried to hold out there. Before his mind turned fully to the town hall though, he paused as he felt a small box in the closet protected by several wards. Clearing the withered clothes aside, he pulled a metal lockbox out. One with a keyhole rather than a combination lock. That wasn't the only security though. He actually hadn't seen anything so complex in regards to magical defenses outside of the Tower of Fate before. He would need a hand from Ken to get into the box for sure. Like before with the photograph, he slipped the box into a magically altered pocket. As he stood up and prepared to head toward the town hall, he paused as he felt something on the edge of his senses. Something trying to pull his attention. He prepared for a fight but moved straight toward the abnormality. It wasn't far, the backyard of an unassuming house. The same as all the other derelict buildings. Except there was someone waiting for him. Or perhaps something. I was told you would eventually come to this place, Scion. I must say the herald's description was unfitting, the figure said as he settled onto the ground near her. Prior to seeing her, had Naruto been asked what a demonic woman might look like, he probably would have gotten pretty close to describing her. She had pale red skin, most of which was on display as her clothes appeared to be a combination of jeweled chains and thin, nearly see-through silky fabric. A fanged smirk splayed across her deceivingly innocent face. Two curled horns parted long black bangs of hair which framed her face and helped to draw attention to the intense bright blue glowing eyes set into her face. So you know Harry probably means you are up to no good like he normally is, Naruto said while crossing his arms over his chest. Harry? The woman asked, tilting her head to the side before breaking out into unnervingly pleasant laughter that caused her body to jiggle in equally pleasant ways. Scion, I had not realized you had a sense of humor. I'll be sure to use your name for my colleague when I next meet him. No doubt he'll be angry about that, the woman said with a broader smile showing off her shark-like teeth. Who are you? Naruto demanded, causing the smile to slip slightly on her face. Forgive my impertinence. You may know me from here on as the seneschal. My duty is to aid and serve my master even when such a service is displeasing. That extends to you, of course, great Scion, the seneschal said seductively as she caressed her body with her clawed hands before fondling her own chest and allowing a reveal of the piercings below. Sin it is. What specifically are you doing here, Sin? Naruto asked while allowing himself to enjoy the attractive demon's appearance. Not that he let his guard down. Knowing her connection to Harry just made him all the more tense. What indeed? I have been awaiting your arrival for some time, Scion. The herald, excuse me, Harry, has repeatedly told me you are unworthy of the role bestowed upon you. I sadly have to agree. Unlike him though, I can see that all you need is the right push, and you would become all that you are meant to be and much more. Sin seemed to almost moan as she spoke, picturing something insane and probably horrifying. Right, Naruto said before his eyes widened and he created a pulsing red shield to protect himself from a gout of flame released by the demon woman. What the fuck? He demanded as she released the attack and smirked toward him. I told you, I serve even when it is displeasing, and all you need right now is a push. She cackled as she let loose another torrent of flames that scoured the overgrown yard and sprang onto the house. You and Harry both are pains in my ass, Naruto grumbled as he easily negated the flames she spewed across the burning yard. Flatterer, the demon cooed before changing tactics and sprinting toward him. She closed the distance rapidly, following right behind the roaring waves of flame before cutting off the fire and launching herself up above Naruto in a high flip turned into a heel drop that he narrowly avoided. Don't you want to come close and personal, Scion? Maybe you'll catch sight of some more piercings. She laughed while transitioning her attack into a rapid and fluid series of melee strikes. Naruto didn't respond as he fell into a defense to keep the demon back. He hadn't expected to use the new set of skills he was growing with Black Canary so soon, but as he reacted to the oncoming kick toward his face before the demon's leg delivered a knockout blow, he was very happy his friend had been sparring with him. Harry said nothing about martial skills. You are proving to be even more fitting than I expected. You will have earned your role in no time at all. We'll make sure of it or you'll die trying, Sin shouted with glee as she happily spread more flames onto surrounding buildings. By now they were fighting in the cracked streets, and entire empty neighborhoods were beginning to light up in flame. Whatever structures had survived the age-old attack stood no chance against the veritable wildfire that Sin let loose. The flames grew out of hand and engulfed everything around them. Smoke filled the air, becoming a massive pillar reaching up into the sky. Naruto was fed up with the situation by now. He hadn't wanted Ridgefield to be wiped away like this. Not when he still wanted to search through its remains for more about the organization as well as the scattered covens around the world. At this rate, though, he wouldn't get the chance. Sin would destroy everything without a care. Switching to the offensive, he began seizing control of the nearest fires to him before twisting and turning them into a white-hot cyclone. With a flick of his wrist, the firestorm he had formed slammed into the demon woman, knocking her off of her feet and engulfing her in an inferno. Whatever brief moment of victory Naruto might have felt was stolen away when he heard her voice calling out over the flames. It was pain or anger, but pure sounds of pleasure, moaning and laughing in ways that set Naruto's hair on end. Normally the sounds she made would have prickled at his senses in a much more pleasant way, however, to sound euphoric at being set on fire. "I cannot wait until you are ready, Scion. I'll service you any way you want, especially if you promise to light me up like that from time to time," she said as she strode out of the flames. He frowned at the sight. Her body was untouched. The fabric of her clothing had burned away, and several of the thin chains of gold and jewels had begun to glow red-hot, as did the piercings that he noticed decorated every sensual part of her body. "Let's go a little further with our first session together," she cried out before her head curled back and her cheeks bulged. With a quick roll and use of his portals, Naruto narrowly avoided a torrent of actual lava sprayed out of Sin's mouth. He clicked his teeth in frustration as he saw where her attack landed. Their fight had stretched all across Ridgefield by now, and the one building that had stood against the flames with little issue had been the town hall. Now the molten liquid melted through its walls and set the interior ablaze, destroying any lead that the location might have offered. What was worse, the demon hadn't even intended to destroy his target. She simply didn't care. "You're invulnerable to heat then," Naruto said in annoyance as he turned his attention back onto Sin. She hummed in a jovial response as she licked up the boiling magma that had spilled onto her lips. Her fingers scooped up droplets that had splattered onto her breasts as well and sensually deposited them into her mouth. The act reminded him a bit too much of the birthday fit that Shira had done for him before Kent was born. "Well, how about I shift gears then?" he said, turning his mind back on task. With a rapid and complex series of twisting movements from his fingers and a pulse of vibrant red energy, the clouds above them began to swirl and thicken as well as darken. Thunder crashed and the winds picked up, suddenly causing the fire to whip up rapidly, only for a sudden deluge of rain to begin drowning the world around them. Sin frowned. Much of the fire was easily sputtering out under the flash flood Naruto had summoned. Her form steamed and smoked as it rapidly cooled down, and her various piercings and pieces of jewelry returned to their original gleaming gold. "How boring. Ruining all that." She pouted toward him. "I'm not done," he simply replied before Sin felt the attack strike her from above. A single bolt of lightning that plastered her against the steaming pavement at her feet. The ground snapped and cratered under the unnatural attack, and pulses of electricity robbed her of her motor control. Previously flawless red skin now had a blackened scar running across her entire body, resembling lightning. "Stay down," Naruto said, far more serious than he had been up until now.